So you're welcome along also to visitors and also Councillor Overham people doing presentations and also DDC officers. So let's begin by looking at the minutes for the last meeting, item 1. Can we have these as a sign up as a true record, or are there any issues with these at all?
Chairman, could I ask if Councillor Long is agreeable that he said that he proposed many of the issues raised in paragraph?
Having reread it, yeah, it's exactly what I said. Yeah. No, I read it at the time and had no. I read all the emails that had been through before, but no, I did go back and look at it, and it was exactly as I said it.
Councillor Long, you accept that as a true record?
Yes.
Of what you said? Thank you.
Undoubtedly.
Councillor Patchett, okay with that?
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. And I mean, from my recollection as chairman, Councillor Long was very, actually very careful with his words on that particular evening, and spoke almost like an oracle on that particular topic at the very end of the topic. So we'll sign those off unless anybody's got any issues. No, very good. Thank you for raising that question, Councillor Patrick, Councillor Long. I'll sign those. Thank you very much. Before we move on to apologies of absence, quickly a reminder for everybody that the purpose of scrutiny is to evaluate and assess performance and then recommend issues on performance. But of course we also do have, if we wish to do so, a pre-scrutiny, so we can look at projects either before, during or after their execution. But very much important is about performance, and therefore that's how we don't stray into the remit of corporate governance. Anybody needs to just reread the constitutional arrangements for the committee to be aware of what our function is. Right, moving on to the second item, apologies for absence. Shouldn't have any because we've got a full house, all members here this evening, very good. And then we move on to declarations of members' interests. It's actually the third item. The numbering. And then we move straight on to the fourth item, the Performance and Contract Managers Report. As you all know, we have this at the end of every quarter, where Julie Lewis gives us an update on performance issues. This gives the opportunities of the members of the committee to ask any questions. Of course, we welcome any questions from members who are not members of the committee as well, also welcome to ask any questions. And we have got a conversation a bit later on coming up about this for Councillor Randall's panel. And the idea behind this, the objective is that it gives us the opportunity to assess performance, consider performance, and then discuss if there are any issues we'd like to investigate in further detail. So, Julie, over to you, please. You can guide us through the document, which is in your packs. Thank you.
Okay, well, if it's all right with you, Chair, if I just concentrate on the red, unless you've got questions about the others.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense as always.
We only have 3 reds, I'm glad to report. Just to mention, this is the end of quarter 2, which is April, May, June, July, August, September. So it's the end of September. So it's just remembering that, because obviously we're well into November now, so things do move. So this is the end of September.
If required, you can give us updates, which bring us up to time if you have that information, if you get any questions. Thank you.
So our first one, B1.1, commercial floor space with planning permission due to council action excluding town centre retail and leisure. We have made progress since last time, and we have gone up to 2,700 square metres. And I did actually mention last time when I reported, although it wasn't in quarter 1, we did know that we'd by then actually achieve that planning permission. So we have got progress there. Why it's actually gone from amber last time to red this time, despite that progress, is because obviously we're now well into sort of the end of the year, and we're not completely confident that we will achieve the full target by the end of March next year. So it was showing amber because we were hopeful we would get there. Now we've downgraded it to a red because we're not quite as confident that we will achieve the required processes in time. So it's still hopeful and there's still time, but not absolutely guaranteeing
So
on
you
that one.
revised it accordingly. Does anybody have any
Yeah.
questions on that particular item, B1.1?
Chairman, can I?
Please do.
Is there anything that that either members or officers can do to try and make that happen better? Or move it forward in any way?
I think, sorry Chair, so it's due to planning permission, isn't it? Is my understanding. Don't know if you want to comment, Maria.
I believe there is a Marches report going on Trust Group this time, and I understand there's a planning commission either in or soon to be in for the related to the project. But it's unlikely to be, even if it does go through smoothly, it's unlikely to be delivered by the end of March. So it could just be that it's rolled forward into early part of next year.
Next council year.
Yeah.
Yes. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, just thinking that we're only in quarter 2. When was it set as an amber in quarter 1, or was it an amber long before that? Because I'm just thinking that it's quickly, you know, that we've gone to a red quite quickly.
I think the project's changed actually. So the Marches project was intended to be delivered this year, but it's actually changed. It's going to be a bigger project, and it put it back. So that is my understanding. The current position with that one.
Thank you. Also, Councillor Randall, don't forget, this is only the second time in this council year that we've actually seen this document, because we've only had 2, obviously it's in quarter 2, and therefore, even if it's orange on the first one, it's moved to red, so basically we've had it at the very next report moving down. There's only 4 of these we'd have in a year anyway, and this is the second one.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking if that project, would you not have known that project was likely to be later, longer on?
No.
Because it got, you know, if it got past
No,
planning.
it was it's changed. It will become apparent when it comes through planning.
Right,
It's a change, and it's one huge project that makes or breaks that indicator, and it just won't be delivered this financial year. Highly unlikely.
Any other questions on that particular one? I think what I'm reassured by is the fact that we've seen a revision from amber to red within the colour coding system, and obviously for the direction of travel document, the arrows in red as well. So we've got a clear update on that one. So Councillor Patchett, yours is about how we can close the performance gap. Does that satisfy your question there in terms of being a particular planning issue and some documents going around strategy?
Well, it does, but I just wondered whether we were waiting. It was a case of we were waiting for information or something from somebody else, or
No, it's all our projects.
Right.
It will be on a paper next strategy next week.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on that particular one? Very good. Let's move to the next one.
Okay, if we go over to the page 2E2, the amount of waste going to landfill.
Actually, sorry, Julian, say that. Can you look at 1.2, because that is amber, actually. It would be interesting to say there's some issues there before we move into E2.
Well, that's in exactly the same state as it was last time. Planning permission has been secured for TCV sites 1 and 5. Again, these are our internal projects that we're working on. We're hoping for site 3 to contribute the remaining 4,000 metres. That's still going through square metres, and that's still going through the system. So we are optimistic that will get through and will achieve green by the end of the year.
And that's why that is still orange?
Yes.
Okay, any questions on that one, anybody?
Yeah, only on the footfall. The footfall seems to, you know, keep slightly increasing, and yet if you go into Daventry on most days, it's empty. So I always wonder how they get those figures.
We do them on counters. Actually, I run up and down outside Barclays for 3 hours up in the numbers.
Really?
No, we've got 3 proper counters. There's one outside Argos, one outside Barclays, one somewhere else, that do literally record the footfall. So it is.
So every time somebody passes it.
Yeah.
It's a recognising mechanism for counting town centre footfall.
Yeah.
So, but how does it not know that it's not catching the same person 6 times every time you go back?
It doesn't.
It doesn't, but it might miss one because 3 people walk together. So It's not a perfect science,
Oh,
but it's a
yeah,
regular.
it's as good as we've got in terms of monitoring.
Is that an electronic system, sorry, an electronic monitoring system? Or is it a person? It's not really a person, is it?
No.
No, it's like,
They use them in museums as well.
it's like a beam,
Yeah.
sort of, as you walk by. Obviously, we have them in the toilets as well. It's how we measure the
Usage.
footfall in the toilets. And again, it could actually be one person that's going in and out a lot, but
But you don't necessarily know, so you just have to measure that.
yeah,
that
it's
particular
the
unit.
best we've got. But I mean, what's important is that it's consistent year on year, so we use the same methodologies all the time. So you are comparing like with like. So I think that's really the way to look at it, rather than whether or not it's a true and accurate record, short of one of us
Does it
sitting
count
over.
24/7, or is it
Yes,
certain days a week?
No, it's on all. When we do the figures, we do Monday to Friday figure, we do a Saturday figure, and we do a Sunday figure, and we obviously average them all out, and it does give us a day-by-day reading.
And can you remind us again where they're located, those meters?
There's one outside Argos, there's one outside Barclays Bank, and there's another one that's up, I think, Sheaf Street. It's the old, used to be the games place.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
Sheaf
right up the
Street.
top.
Next
The
Greg's.
snooker club. Oh,
Oh, that's not cheap, that's Bowen Square.
So yeah, along there. It used
Yeah,
to be, it's called,
Forest.
what's it's called on this thing? It's called.
Called Planet, I think, is there now, isn't it, or something called, whatever it's called.
It's called on our thing. It's called. It's the old Clicks.
Yes, yeah, it is Click, yeah, still Clicks.
Yeah, the camera
It's there.
shop.
Yeah, the camera
Yeah.
one is next to Greg's. Yes.
yeah.
They're interesting locations, those, actually, aren't they? Because if you look at a lot of traffic might run across by Bowen Square between Waitrose and Rondell, seems to be quite busy. Councillor Patrick, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking that because the population's rising in Daventry, we might get more footfall, so there should be an increase year on year rather than staying the same.
We are. I think. Sorry, Chair. The important thing is that we are actually booking the national trend, and we are actually doing quite well. So it's.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anna first.
Yeah, I suppose we don't do any sort of data about whether shops see improvement in footfall, because a lot of people do just walk on. Sometimes I might go up and up down the street in and out, and not have actually really bought one thing, but I've gone in and I've gone out and thought, oh, I've gone back to the car and I've come back out. Do we have any sort of data on whether shops are noticing, increase in their people using their shops? I suppose we can't do that. We record that sort of data, do we? Or do we have?
Julie, what's your answer to
Well,
that?
we have discussed that actually, because I think that point has actually risen before, but no, we don't, because understandably the shops probably don't want to give us that data. We look at kind of the number of voids in the town centre as well, so we know actually how our shops are doing in terms of how many shops we've got, but in terms of income, no. We have got, we do talk about the GOAD data at the bottom there, which tells us a little bit about, and that's national data again, but that tells us a little bit about money that's being spent within the Daventry catchment. And next quarter, I've just actually got the report through this week actually on that, but that's really as good as we've got, I'm afraid.
With regard to that, Chairman, one would have thought that as far as the shop's concerned, it's commercially very sensitive, and it's not
Exactly.
something you want in the public domain at all.
It'd be quite an interesting data
It's not
collection
on
process.
sales, it's just whether their sales have increased or gone down. It's not,
And I think that at the end of the day, though,
when they
if
close
you're-
up, they've struggled.
Well, yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
That would be
that's
argued.
counting the voids.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Tony, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say the target is actually around leisure space. The rest of this information is sort of contextual, really, to help you get an understanding of what's going on whilst we're waiting for more square meterage.
Absolutely, thank you for that. Let's move on to
One
the second
question.
page. Sorry, Councillor Perry.
Yeah, no. Obviously, you've asked questions on the Daventry. I'm more interested in the national, this survey, which has come from PwC and the local data company. Does that pick out any trends on a national basis as to why shops are going down in any particular area, or is there any more so we can see, if we're doing different things to what they're doing, or is it just we've got perhaps a more prosperous area where people might have more money to spend?
I think certainly, sorry Chair, going through, so I think it depended on things like where your shops were, i.e. whether it was a retail park or a town centre. And it did give you a little bit of, well, as it says there, a little bit more information about the types of shops. But I think when we went through it, the one that's obviously coming out everywhere is the good old internet is kind of, causing the problems. And I think perhaps slightly that if you look at kind of our town centre and the shops that we have, perhaps compared with some of your bigger centres, we're perhaps not being hit as hard because we've not got the big Currys and the big PC Worlds and whatever that are perhaps suffering more from the internet buying, and that's what came out when we went into it. So I don't know if you want.
Thank you. Councillor Overy, a portfolio
I
overarching
don't want to muck you about at all, but I went to a conference dealing with the regeneration of high streets, and it was quite interesting. From all over the country now, as the high streets are generally shrinking, and you have to accept that that is likely to happen. And the forefront of the high street will be that those, it will be quite volatile, that people will react actually back to opportunities within the high street, and people will come and they will go. The idea that Tinker Tailor, so to say, the candlestick maker of yesteryear, as we remember the great stability in the high streets, will remain is that they are likely to be volatile. But one thing that does affect it actually back, of course, is that there are often premises in the high street that were designed in actual fact with shops, with families living, with actual businesses living over the shops, where these days many of the people who actually own or run the shops in the high street don't actually live in the town, live elsewhere. So often the premises are above. And there's been a move to try to use the premises above. And this has been quite interesting because sometimes it's good news and sometimes it's bad news. If you get reasonably well-to-do single people living in those sort of places, maybe young professionals in a well-to-do area, in actual fact they can themselves help considerably to reinvigorate the high street. And also bridge the gap between the daytime events, and there's a sort of gap between what you might call the late night thrashers and the evening, which there's a sort of an interregnum almost. They sometimes help to bridge that interregnum by the fact that they use cafes and things, what have you, during that particular period. The other one has been, well, why don't we in actual fact say that we'll put the homeless in there? I'm exaggerating the story, so forgive me, I tend to do that sort of thing. Why don't we put the homeless in there? Well, we've had some backfire on that kind of thing, where in actual fact it's been that there's been exaggerated a problem where people say, well, I might go into this town during the day, in actual fact, but there's been some social problems there with people throwing rubbish out the windows, cigarette ends out and making the place look awful. Now I'm going from one extreme to the other on this one, but in terms of rejuvenation of the high street and what you use your high street for, and the premises in the high street for, and notwithstanding listed buildings in actual fact, which of course can be another problem. Everyone wants the listed building to be preserved, but the only way you're going to preserve them in many cases is by putting them back to good use, and what you determine as good use. So there's a lot of things coming to the high street. I think Daventry's high street, I'm talking about the true high street itself, is comparatively small. I think Daventry is doing, I think, a lot better than most, and I would hope to see that the premises above the shops in the high street do come back to life too. And I think the great thing will be that then we already have plans in place with the big development and everything else, which I think will go some way to making certain that we rejuvenate Daventry as a whole, and the high street will, I think, resume its niche market role when we see those developments as it will working their way through. And I think that's probably going to be the way that it seems to be, and that's been illustrated. It works reasonably well elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll stop there.
Some anomalies, of course.
Thank you. We've got a lot to get through, so forgive me for truncating you. Councillor Hills, and then we'll go back to Julie to get us on to the next one.
Thanks for letting me speak, Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor Randall mentioned about footfall and the businesses. And one thing that I've been harping on about for the last few years, that I certainly don't believe that our businesses in the town make the best of the footfall that actually comes into the town at times. And I mean that quite sincerely. I think they could make better use of it. I'll give you an example. Sports Awards night, you get people from all over the district. That is a night time. But one of the things is the Daventry Triathlon. First year we had 200 competitors. Next year 250. And then went up to 321. This year we had 340. We had people from all over the country come along. We even had a chap from Whitby who was running his first marathon, and he came to Daventry to try it. And one of the things that people ask is, well, what have you got in the way of shops? What have you got to eat? Because not only have you got all those competitors staggering in at various times, you've got their families in many cases that come, and the place is teeming. Councillor Long has been with me one year when we've handed out the medals on that, and you've got all those people there, and our businesses don't make advantage of it. And I believe that when we get football into the town, we want to spur our businesses on, and I think they could be making more of situations like that when we've got people coming in. Because one of the first things they ask, they come up to me and say, where do we pay to park? Free parking. Oh, that's great. Well, we stay and have a meal, you know, and things like that. So we've got the people here. Let's try and make sure that our businesses make better use of it.
Thank you, Councillor. So there's a lesson there for entrepreneurialism. Back to you, Julie. Thank you.
Okay, if we go over to the page to E2, reduce the amount of waste generated.
You can stop it there. So, what the logic of the sheet?
Well,
it goes
actually,
from B to E and then back to C. How does that work?
I have to say, sorry, what do you mean?
It goes from B to E and then on a separate sheet you have C. Am I missing something?
Well, I have to say, when it left my computer, it was all on separate pages and it worked quite well.
It's been mangled.
And I don't know quite what's happened in terms of the page break there. So E1 at the bottom should have dropped onto the next page. So my apologies, something's happened in the formatting there. So at the bottom of the page you've got E1, reduced energy use, and then if you turn over that page, you've got E2 at the top of the next page.
That's okay, so noted, but in any event you can actually point us towards specific references, so you can talk to us about
yeah,
E2.1.
if you start at the top, E2.1, the amount of waste going to landfill, it is red. It was red last time. It will be red next time. We're anticipating it staying red all year. Landfill waste is well over target. We had a couple of campaigns running, the RAP campaign, and a Reduce Your Waste campaign, so there's a couple of things going on out there, but I can't change the fact that it's red.
Let's have some questions and conversations. It's a recurring subject, clearly. Councillor Rundle?
Yeah, I think I've got recycling rates on this one this time. Do we not usually have both? We usually have landfill and recycling. Do we not?
No, we actually, sorry through yourself, Chair, we actually changed it at the end of last year when we set the new targets for this year, and we decided we'd just go for landfill. I mean, well, to be honest, they're pretty much a reflection of each other. You know, what doesn't go to landfill goes to recycling.
Right,
so.
okay. The only reason that I'm asking is, do you know how many times recycling is not recycled and it's tipped into the landfill lorries? Do you get that recorded here?
Through yourself, Chair.
Please.
The only figures we get,
right,
and I have had, I don't know if you're asking because I've had 2 complaints today and yesterday about that very issue, as it happens. The only figures we get are what goes to recycling and what goes to waste, other than unless it is reported directly as a complaint because a customer has seen it. It's a bit like the food waste is exactly the same. We don't get numbers of how many people actually leave food waste. We only get a total tonnage at the end.
Actually, Chairman, I sent you an email, Julie, didn't I? Well, one of my residents had said, why do we do it, having just witnessed this?
But I've had another one from Abigail this morning on exactly the same issue.
And I haven't put mine in, but it's been brought to my attention, and this happens. It's not a one-off.
I'm not.
You know, I wasn't aware.
Julie, can we just move this back to the data here? You've got it was 252 at the end of the first sentence. What 252? What's the unit? Is that what is the unit of measurement there?
That's the kilograms per household.
252 kilos
yes.
per household.
So we get a total figure, and then we divide it by our total number of households. That's
yep.
33,000 and something and 58.
And of course, so let's have a look. So the target, this is cumulative, isn't it? So the target is...
Yeah, the target is 305.
The amount of waste going to landfill should be 305. Already we're up to 248,
yes. Yep.
Which, I mean, just on a very basic approach, you could be looking at half-year point. That's
yes.
500.
Yeah.
kilos per household.
Yeah.
It did strike me actually that it's slightly disappointing tone of resignation in your voice when you say it's likely to stay red all year. I mean, obviously because we're quite close to the target now, it's going to stay red. But what other mitigation can we put in place to make sure we at least attempt to achieve our target?
We obviously have the various penalty clauses in the contract that we're applying. Simon and myself meet with the contractors as often as possible. Obviously, when I get reports directly of the complaints, I send those through. So we are kind of applying it at the highest level we can apply it for. But I think I do explain, and I will explain again, that the fundamental problem with this is that their targets weren't particularly realistic in the first place. They're contractual targets, so they won't change, but they struggle to reach their recycling target because arguably it was never actually a 100% realistic target. So they're always, in a sense, on a bit of a back foot before they start, which is why, I'd say, yes. So there's that issue with the fact that, yes, at this point there's no way with 4 or 5 months left to go that they are going to pull that back now, which is why I say it is, likely to stay red.
I think we recognise the situation here, but it's a very damning indictment when we're actually here at the end of quarter 2 actually saying this is going to be this way throughout the year. I think we need to note that as a committee that it's a very disappointing situation to be in. It's almost like we're planning to fail to achieve our performance goals.
But so I do need to stress there that the issue there is because of the target. Part of the issue is because of the target, and we do have that discussion every year. It's a contractual target. We knew in April that it would be very, very unlikely that they would reach that target.
How does their performance compare to this time last year, the quarter 2 last year? Have they deteriorated even from their
slightly lower than it was? It's slightly lower than what it was for this time last year. It was 252. Last year it's 248 this year for exactly the same 2 quarters. So it's slightly better than last year.
It's slightly better than last year.
I think to clarify, for the 7-year contract, the targets were set for the entire 7 years and can't be renegotiated.
I think we understand that well, but it strikes me that we perennially miss our targets, and they don't seem to be doing anything.
They were increasing targets, and they're not getting there, are they?
No.
Councillor Patrick.
One thing that worries me, and I hear from my village parish councils, is that the bins aren't being collected as often and as frequently as they have been. And I just wonder whether it was the case that they was attempting to reduce their waste to landfill, what they're collecting, by not emptying the bins as often.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not quite sure what
you mean by... question, Councillor Patrick.
Basically, what I mean is if you empty the bins once a week, you're collecting a certain amount of rubbish that will go to landfill because it won't be going anywhere else, presumably. And instead of that, they're collecting them every 2 weeks, so the bins are overflowing, and so people aren't putting more in it, so they're reducing what they're collecting for landfill.
But that their frequency hasn't changed. Their frequency has remained exactly the same throughout the whole contract. It's not changed.
Oh, I presume that it is, but what's happening in reality is that they're not doing it as frequently as they should do.
I think Councillor Patrick outlined if there are any specific issues that need to be raised. Some more
I'm talking generally.
So yeah, I mean, we often have this, if there are sort of a kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? If we note a trend, then that needs to be reported. Do we have any other comments on this one? Actually,
Can I just ask Julie a question? Julie, looking at this, is this a failing? Taking on board, by the way, the fact that the statistics in the first place were perhaps unrealistic. Is there a failing somewhere along the line to either educate the general public to recycle? It hasn't been repeated, the message hasn't got home and people have dropped back off? Or is there something more obvious other than just the fact that the figures were too high? Because even if the figures were too high and you saw the fact that the public had been educated and it was getting closer, then you say, well, actually they are getting closer, but it doesn't appear to be that way.
Chair, having spent the day at the APSI Waste Conference, it's very much been the discussion all day about what are people doing to increase recycling. well, what all councils are trying to do is reduce their residual waste. The answer to that is more recycling. I've listened to a number of presentations today where that, basically they talked about Bury, which has obviously been in the headlines quite a lot, and they went live 5 weeks ago, where they've gone to three weekly collections. And also Monmouth, okay, they're in Wales, and they've been going a year now, but what they've done in both of those councils, they've actually restricted the amount of residual waste that you can put out. But so, they're kind of, if you like, forcing you to recycle, but along with that, they've done all the recycling campaigns, etc., about, raising awareness. But because they're now saying we will not collect that residual waste, you're not giving people a choice. But they've done all their research to actually show how much recycling was going into the residual before they did that. So I think the answer to the question is it's both. I think it is about education, it's about policies, it's about actually enforcement in one sense, which a number of councils are now doing. Monmouth are interested in still collecting a number of separate waste streams, but certainly all the presentations have been today about you will get more recycling and less residual if you are commingled. Which is a whole other discussion, but it's some of everything. And hand on heart, and I said before, I think some of our processes, because of the contractual situation we're in, are not perhaps as customer friendly in terms of encouraging you to recycle. So the whole thing really needs looking at. But it's remembering in our current contractual situation, our contractors, the cost of changing vehicles, of changing the way they cook up and whatever, is absolutely huge. It's not a quick fix. And they are looking at, we've got all sorts of campaigns going out, Pledge for Plastics, wrap campaigns or whatever, to try and raise that awareness. But certainly all the presentations today have really hammered home how much they've spent on communication about, it is a real campaign to raise that awareness.
Thank you. Councillor Randall, thank you.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that I come across actually, and I've had my new little calendar out today, is that all cardboard has got to be folded to the size of a cereal packet. Now, and as I've said many times, we've got an ageing population. They cannot fold that cardboard. It goes in that black bin. So to me, that is the biggest amount of recycling that we used to recycle that we have now lost.
It's a lost opportunity, I think. We
huge.
discussed this in my own personal situation before with a piece of cardboard. Now, the fact is they're not making it. It feels to me that they're not doing anything to make it easier for the residents, and they're losing the opportunity here to capture the waste. What is it, 3 or 4 years left now of the contract? Are we going to be having this conversation just limp home with this almost acceptance of underperformance? There's going to be some kind of message. I mean, even for their own reputation, there must be more they can do to help us here turn things around, other than limping on having these mechanisms in place to penalise.
I think all I can do with members of SMT and members here is reassure you that we are doing everything possible at as high a level as possible to try and improve performance of contracts. And it's not easy. We're talking lawyers, legal, whatever. What you've got to remember is for a contractor that is saying they're not making money on the contract, everything we're talking about costs them more money. So put it in their shoes, they're not going to jump up and down to suddenly change processes or whatever when it may cost them more money. But we are doing everything possible to try and move the situation forward, right down to we have a new officer starting on the 1st of December who bless her job is going to be very much to monitor much more closely exactly what is going on.
While we're on the subject, we obviously did have some money set aside for further improvements to monitoring. Can you tell us how that's impacting the performance of the contract?
Well,
is that the person?
That is the officer. She starts on the 1st of December, so hopefully by next quarter, it'll still be quite early next quarter, but to pick up on some of the complaints that some of you have asked us, part of the problem bear in mind it's supposed to be a self-monitoring contract. There has only been me, and this is only supposed to be a little bit of my job. It's having the capacity to actually monitor the complaints that come through, and I'm generally talking about the higher level, more serious complaints, and follow them through the process to the point that, well, actually, we've now got 15 of those examples of poor recycling or whatever, and it's almost a kind of audit and systems person to really put that in place. Will it improve performance? I don't know, but what it will certainly do is give us easier to hand evidence of all the bits that are going on. Yeah.
Councillor Long.
Yeah, just an observation, Julie. I mean, I know where we live. If I go back 2 years, or when it first started in the first couple of years, when you actually took a walk around, as I've done in my patch, on the mornings that waste collection was due to be done, the early stages, you would let's take the grey bins rather than the brown ones, just for the moment. When you take a look around, you saw most people had grey bin, the red box and the blue box. It's interesting. I took a walk around the other week, just before they came, and the number of people who had actually only got the grey bin, and you looked, the wind has blown them away, they've not bothered to have them replaced, and all that, instead of going to recycling, just go straight into the grey bin.
Lost opportunities, that's the point.
But that is just, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of hard work just to take 2 or 3 rows, walk round, and just see when there is a grey bin, how many of them have the boxes and how many no longer still have them. Because that, that would be one way I would have thought of revitalising it and getting stuff straight back into recycling rather than straight into a grey bin.
If I can just answer that, I mean, again, just going back to, yes, part of that's about the contractor, but the presentations today were very much what has made the difference to the recycling is that they have now limited how much ordinary waste they can put out.
Yeah.
So if they're not going to collect the ordinary waste, they will start recycling more, and that message in itself would actually kind of force people to then have their red, they get the red box, their blue box, whatever replaced, and put more recycling in.
Isn't there not a risk of people then doing fly tipping and things like that?
Well, again, the early days, but in Wales it's been going for a year, it hasn't been an issue. The 6 weeks it's been running in Bury, they've kind of said they haven't seen a change. I mean, that is always a risk, and when EMS tried to enforce the, if your bin lid's quite, slightly raised, we won't empty it, again we ask those questions. Always got a little bit of that risk, but, that seems to be the way councils are enforcing it, by restricting the residual, and that probably is the way to go to really force the message.
I do go back to the point though. I think if you were to go round and you were to refresh both the blue and the red bins, yes, there's an investment in doing it, but at the end of the day you probably find people who are willing to do it, they're they can't be bothered to actually reorder for anybody.
I think what strikes me here from the discussion we're having is there are some underlying issues where we're almost stuck in this pattern, this holding pattern with Eamon, and almost it's great that you've come back refreshed perhaps with some of the things you've observed, Julie, but really having the opportunity to take that forward with them seems limited. I mean, I would like it on behalf of this committee to have it noted that we're disappointed with the chronic performance of this, again, because it did so and pick this up. But also acknowledge that as an officer community, we're doing the best in difficult circumstances. Are we happy to have that specifically noted on this particular issue? Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one, Julie.
I'm going down to the bottom of the page, E4.2, conservation area appraisals carried out. Target was for 3 for the year. At the end of the second quarter, they hadn't carried any out. The reason for that is because the same team of staff deal with speculative planning applications, which there seems to have been quite a few of this year, so their resources have been diverted. So at the minute, haven't made any progress on that one, but obviously it's in their work programme to try and improve that situation. But when there's things they don't have control of, then obviously you have to prioritise your workload and what you can do.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have, but not on that one. It was on that E3.1, on that street and environmental cleanliness, that we've got waiting for a result from October. I'd imagine that that's going to be probably...
If I can answer that, Chair?
Yeah, please do.
The results actually came out this morning.
Right, okay.
So by the end of the next quarter. We have asked some questions over those results at the minute, and we are analysing them, and by next quarter, or well, actually by next week, I will have them out and will circulate them as soon as they're in that position.
Right, okay, because I was just going to say, bearing in mind that there's been quite a number of clean-ups, that obviously it wouldn't have come out very good.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Yeah, regarding conservation areas, is that likely to remain red for the rest of the year, or are we likely to see some progress and actually have a sort of appraisal started? Because I would believe there was something to be done with the canal conservation area this year, and I know there's some interest with the parish councils I represent as the canal goes slack through the ward.
That would be with them. We'd have to get feedback from that, about that from Richard and Simon.
I mean, I think it's the fact that literally the planning applications they've had to deal with, they can't predict how many they'll have to deal with, which has caused the problem. So we're obviously hopeful that we will get at least one done by the end of the year, but that's the unknown factor that we can't control.
Thank you. Councillor Perry, okay?
Yeah.
We're going to move. Julie, can you also talk to us about... sorry, we had a question.
Just a point, I suppose, that could affect that position is that the Joint Strategic Planning Committee and the plans that have gone forward to the inspector have now come back, and if the plan is adopted, then it may well reduce the levels of speculative development, and particularly large areas of speculative development, which may be sucking in resources because there'll be some conservation issues related to these areas. Maybe that situation will, to some extent, be relieved by the fingers crossed approach, I suppose, on this one. But
the resource impacts of this. Thank you. Julie, can you talk to us about C1.3? Because I notice it's moved down. It's not red, but it's moved from green to orange, I guess. Indicate looking at the red arrow. 1.3. It's one of
yeah, it's quite simply that they fluctuate tremendously in terms of when the rents come in. Some pay quite a bit for 2 or 3 months, some pay quarterly, whatever. So it's purely fluctuation on when the payments have actually happened, and that is quite simply why it's now showing a red. We anticipate that...
the arrow is red.
Yeah,
yes.
that it's gone down slightly. We anticipate that it will achieve, and income is very good from the commercial rents. They're doing a really good job there.
So the expected finishing point on that is still green?
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody, that's all of them actually, isn't it, that we want to do by section?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody, about any of those either covered or not covered?
Well, I was just going to ask for clarification regarding C3, the corporate plan achievements. Did you go red arrow?
Which, good point actually, it's got a red arrow but it's green. C3.2. Thank you.
I put a... This was the difficulty of arrows and what they mean. It's green because it's still within 5% or better than target. I put a red down arrow because it's very slightly less than it was last time, and the arrows are compared with last quarter. And because we've got that one change right at the beginning where it went from amber to red, it has affected that one at the bottom and made it slightly less. So I put a red down arrow, but this is the question.
Thank you.
Arrows.
There were red arrows. Councillor Perry's still on form. Very good. Thank you very much. Any further questions, anybody? Very good. Thank you, Julie, as always, for coming and coming into the den and informing us accordingly. If there's no further questions, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Julie, you're, of course, free to go if you so wish. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Ground maintenance at my conference tomorrow, so you can ask me about how to improve ground maintenance.
Excellent. It must be very frustrating going to these benefit conference like that. Thank you very much, and thanks again for all your help. Righto, item number 5. Now, this leads on, to quickly recap here the objective. We felt as a committee some time ago that one of the best ways to have healthy debates, conversations, scrutinise issues, rather than always going for a big, long, protracted scoping document exercise, etc., 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 is to get people in front of us, have a bit more time to luxuriously explore the issues. Of course, one of the issues, particularly when it's particularly pre-scrutiny and having you in front of us to to explain yourself and your projects is things move on, of course, and do acknowledge this, and we've had various conversations about whether indeed it was opportune to present this evening or not. We felt that basically since we'd invited you to start to prepare, we'd still have a good opportunity to discuss the issues. You may come out of here this evening with no questions, if so, so be it. But at our last meeting, particularly, Councillor Long also is very interested in having you along, and this also dovetails with a scoping document project that Councillor Long is working on too. So what we'd like to do is have you talk to us about this project. We've given you the scope to talk about it as you wish, but then we've got a series of questions which the panel, the committee would like to ask you once you've done your presentation. So I'll hand over to, we've got Maria, of course, and then Councillors Hills and Warren to go through the project and give us a bit more detail. We appreciate there may be some things that we have to be particularly careful about what we speak about because of the phase of the project, but we'd like to really understand your thinking about the execution of the project, particularly the risks and so on and so forth. So please, lead away, whoever's leading.
If I can just give you a copy of the thing, so I'll search around.
And before you start, thanks for coming. Much appreciated for taking the time.
Well, you can pay us as
Chairman, it might be appropriate that as DDHR consortium partner, I am on the board of directors of them.
Thank you very much.
Don't have any input on this.
I can confirm actually that whilst they're still, in the broadest sense, consortium partners, they're not company members of Daventry District Wellbeing, but they are still, they haven't ruled themselves in, but they haven't ruled themselves out, so.
Good, thank you. I think I remember this before actually, because I think I remember seeking advice, but also this would apply to me because I also sit as trustee on the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Oh, they are in.
And in due course it'll have an impact on us as well.
I'm going to declare an interest there too because I'm involved in that, and also I've been elected as a director of this.
That's right.
That's right. I only took it because it was the money I was after.
You get the same fee as we do, Chris.
Interested to find out what it's all about this evening, so that's very useful being here.
Absolutely. So you're wearing two hats, but you're speaking in due course with the correct hat on in the context of this, as will I.
Does this square anyone's picture, so I'll leave the room, you know.
Yeah. Obviously, we're not decision making.
No.
This is important. We're only fact finding, satisfying ourselves of the facts. Thank you very much. Whoever's leading on.
Well, I'll make a start, Chairman. I'll put my glasses on so that I can see you all better, and I can also see what I'm doing, which does help. I'd just like to give you a slight little bit of the background on this. This is part of the County Council's supporting people, and they're looking at commissioning and prevention. This applies to over 18s, otherwise the adult section. I thought that's a point worth making. This did go before a strategy group, and there was a presentation report on the 24th of July at full council, and one of the resolved items there was that DDC Leader Consortium to tender for community wellbeing services. So this is just to bring it up to date. If you look, you've got the consortium partners there, Everyone Health, Care and Repair, Bromford, Principal Medical Limited, DDH, Mine, Volunteer Centre, Northampton Aid UK, and the Citizens Advice Bureau. So they're consortium partners. When you come over to the next page, let's put it in context. Less money, there's no doubt about that, but more local choice, and it's going to be very important as to how resources are used, that these are used correctly. In actual fact, as it says, there's very different outcomes are expected compared to the services that are current. And as I said earlier on, this is NCC supporting people, and it means that this is going to be a major shift rather than involve change. And you're looking at 730k per year for 4 years. And why is the council involved? Well, there's no doubt about it that our partners certainly look to us at the District Council to take the lead. This was discussed very thoroughly at our Health and Wellbeing Board, and they in turn supported DDC taking the lead on this. And we're looking at a consortium and a company, and also some of our LSP members were also behind this. So we had quite a lot of backing from prospective partners, etc. I felt that there was a certain amount of impartiality in local leadership that we've got, and we could build on our existing working relationships. There are choices, there's opportunities, and it's influencing and enabling or direct delivery. There are risks, these have to be understood, and these have to be mitigated. And we have to be aware of these risks, and we have to look at them within our planning, etc. Now, if you look at the service, if you look from the left here, you've got the formal referrals, the contact by residents, partners and libraries, etc. And if you move over to the right, you've got the initial screening, the assessments, the menus of choice, and then you've got the three areas, or the three pathways. You've got physical well-being, social well-being, and mental well-being, which then arrows up towards the existing service. So let's have a look at some physical well-being. There's key areas of delivery on this. 3,200 health checks, 500 12-week weight management courses, and 50 stop smoking courses. What will the service include? As I said, health checks, behaviour change programs, i.e. losing weight, stop smoking, increased physical activity, all the things that we as a council are looking to do anyway. Low-level drug, alcohol support. So that covers quite a wide spectrum under physical well-being. Pathway 2, social well-being. The key areas of delivery here are 900 assessments, and the service will include those suffering from social isolation, keeping people in their homes for longer, general debt and welfare advice, and support for carers. And then mental well-being. The service will include supporting vulnerable adults to engage in volunteering, access education and training, improve their employability. I think that's a very important thing. Provide short-term, time-limited interventions focused on enablement and self-care management. Mental well-being checks and tailored support. So that's your three pathways outlined for you there. What's happened since July? Well, Daventry Wellbeing Limited was established. Partner due diligence completed, and I think that's something that's very important, that we look at this with due diligence. On the 6th of August, the Chief Executive agreed the bid in consultation with the leader and deputy leader. We actually submitted the bid on the 8th of August, and on the 9th of September there was a presentation to NCC by Kevin Fagan, and I think it was a couple of others that took part in that presentation.
Who else was there?
There was Nikki Allen, wasn't it, from
Right.
SLM,
Yeah.
and Josie from
Bromford, that's right.
Bromford.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. Okay. On the 31st of October, we had notification from the NCC that preferred bidder for Daventry, and you see in brackets there it's 10-day cooling off period. On the 11th of November, NCC confirmed no legal challenge to Daventry.
So, Councillor Hills, for clarity, that's right up to today, basically.
That's right up to date.
We have that today, haven't we?
What they have said that any further information, because there is still a state of flux in a way, is embargoed. So let's move on to what happens next, and then we'll take some excellent question.
Thank you.
We need to understand the Northamptonshire landscape, engage with other preferred bidders, because there might be some in other districts, etc., that we could be involved with. Engage and negotiate with NCC and existing partners. Look at our implementation options, liaise with other providers, and, as I said earlier, report to the 4th of December Council. Can the company deliver the contract for the funding available? Chief Executive decision in consultation with leader, and there are numerous possible outcomes from this. Nothing is cut and dried at this stage. I think that's also worth mentioning. We can take any questions now, and what I will say is, because of the embargo, if a question arises that we cannot answer at this stage, we will make a note and come back to you with answers.
Thank you. I fully appreciate that. Hence the correspondence we've had. There may be things we know we can't discuss.
We have passed these around, and it's a very brief outline of where we are today, and obviously where we can, we will take questions, and each one of the three of us will have a go at answering it for you.
So, Councillor Hills, I think what we're particularly interested in is the thinking involved in the process, particularly around some of the core aspects. Let's open it to the committee. Do we have any questions we'd like to lead off on, please? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I take it just by looking at this, it's a 4-year contract. It's got the maximum 4 years, is that correct?
Yeah.
And obviously, in the consortium partners, there are a number of voluntary groups. Would we secure their funding for 4 years to make sure that they stayed, as the main partner?
There may be aspects of that. They're aware that that is a possibility, but right now we do not know the answer to that. So if they are actively implementing some of the contract, then they will be suitably paid for that. But there's no guarantee, and particularly the CAB and CAB and the volunteers and Age UK are keen to be involved anyway, because they've got a presence and they recognise that they've got a role referring in and that sort of thing. So they want to be involved in this, in shaping it, in determining what it looks like. They're not actually, Volunteer Centre is a director on the board, on the company, but the other two aren't. But they're really supportive of this, and there may well be projects that they deliver as part of it, but none of that detail has been determined. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Randall, any other questions, or are you happy with that answer?
No, I'm happy with that. No, thank you.
Any other questions? Please do, Councillor.
When is this company liable to sort of be up and running and working, or are we still waiting to?
Did you already say it was established on the previous slide?
Yeah, the company's been established. It had one meeting. It's got another meeting planned for Thursday, which will be Councillor Over's first meeting, because after the first meeting, Councillor Over was appointed by DDC as the DDC director on the board.
Right, so it's all up and running now?
The Daventry District Wellbeing Company is now an established company. There are 5 directors, including one, which is Councillor Over.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And the second question really was, with people who will want to gain assistance from this, does the local connection still apply as it's done in the past?
It's not something we've considered, but it would be logical to have a local connection, because it wouldn't make sense for us to provide services to people unless they had a local connection to the district. So that's probably worth considering. The actual operational detail, nothing has been discussed or decided.
Okay.
Can I just say, looking at this in my nature, and when you sort of look at quite a complex business, this is this is a bidding out here, and I'm trying to play catch up on this, so we'll keep the secret, don't you? People bidding for this, is this what they do as far as we're concerned? They bid to provide the service, persuade us that is the service which is needed, obviously needed, but
what's to be delivered is that's already set in stone by NCC, so they're expecting the outcomes that you saw earlier on the slide. So they've said what the outcomes are. How we get there is going to be a matter for the company if they choose to go ahead with the contract. So we're expecting that. We had it when we put in the bid. We said what we anticipated that might look like, but we have a load of discussions to have with our own partners and other providers to establish if that is the best way to deliver it. There might be other partners we get involved in, and ultimately the big question is, can we deliver that contract for that amount of money? If we, as in the company, can't do that, and there's no way of reaching it so we can, we simply won't enter into a contract.
But the aspirations laid out through you, Chairman, within this, and actually that are potentially quite demanding, aren't they? In terms of
Can we have some clarity on this, please? In terms of the specification that we pitched for, these are those slides, pathways 1, 2 and 3. That's what we're looking at here. That's what has been specified, the outcomes that we need to deliver.
That's in brief what was in the tender document, and that's what they said. We've got 730k
to deliver those
outcomes.
I think it's worth stating that this process from the NCC has been going on since about 2011. They've been looking at this over a long period, and I know Maria and I have been to several meetings on this, and gradually they've evolved as to what it is now, and there was the proper bidding process that took place. It's now a question of this is as far as we've got. We now want more meat on the bone so that we can move forward, which I think is very important.
What does it mean, Councillor Hills, to have more meat on the bones to move forward?
Well, I think we need to know if there's going to be, perhaps it could be a slight change by the NCC and what they want.
What might they change? Do you know? Are you able to talk to us about that?
Don't know at this stage. And I say that speaking as a county councillor. Don't know. And I'll be quite frank on that, but they could change something. So like we want to change an outcome or do something like that. There could be perhaps other partners that we might want to bring in, or other partners may say, well, we want to do this or want to do that. So it's very much in a way at the moment, I think, as I said earlier on, in the state of flux. But we are confident that by the time we come to the full council on December the 4th, then we will have something to put in front of full council that will apply. And therefore, as Maria said, unless it meets what we think we can do and we can achieve, we have the option that we can walk away from it.
Councillor, that's only 23 days away, actually. Is that realistic that you'll have enough information?
There'll be some more, I think it's fair to say there'll be more information to full council, but we're not expecting full council to make a decision on whether to say yes or no. We'll actually be given as much information as we've got to full council at that time. And the likely, I need to discuss this with the Chief Executive, but the likely recommendation to council is that the decision is delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader again, because we simply won't be in a position to make a decision. But the decisions are broadly, yes, we go ahead, the company goes ahead and Daventry District Council is involved. The company may go ahead without Daventry District Council's involvement.
Well, sorry, by the company you mean the...
Daventry District Wellbeing Limited. The County Council knows that that is the means by which Daventry District will be getting its...
That will be the contracting partner for the
yes.
That's the entity.
That's right. We led the bid, but the company will be implementing that.
Yeah, thank you. But before we come to Councillor Patchett, any other questions? Tony, I know we've had some correspondence here about some risk profiling of this. Can you give us some insight into that, please?
Well, I mean,
that's appropriate.
I can tell you what I understand the situation is, and I'm looking across the table if I'm incorrect. But essentially, the Daventry District Council is not bidding for this work. What Daventry District Council is a partner in the consortium. The consortium has set up the company Daventry Wellbeing Limited, and it is Daventry Wellbeing that will make a decision whether they go forward with the contract or not once the details emerge through discussions with the County Council.
So the role that we have to decide upon as a full council is whether we want to play the role in that the Wellbeing Limited organisation.
Yes.
Is that the case?
Yes.
But if we were to say no, we didn't want to, then the consortium could go ahead without us.
The council is one partner.
One partner.
And as a partner, we could be a very involved partner doing lots of things, physically delivering lots of these pathways, or we could just be an enabling partner, or we could maybe hold the money, or somebody else holds the money, or we could simply just host one post. I mean, the options are wide and various, and no decisions or recommendations have been made at this point, and they won't be made. We won't be ready to get to that position by 4th of December. That's going to happen sometime between, I'm guessing, December and about early February, I should think, because there's an awful lot to discuss. We don't understand the landscape. Partners don't know where they're at, because obviously some of our partners have been involved in lots of bids across the county, and we don't officially know what's happened with them at this point.
We've got some debate going now, so I've got, let me line up, I've got Long, then back to Patchett, Perry, and then Tony. Is that okay? Unless you actually want to say well.
If I could just come in now, Chairman, please. It was just in terms of the risk. The key to managing the risk is setting up Daventry Wellbeing, whatever it's called, Limited, because the risks are carried by that company.
By that company.
Yes, so the council will not carry the risks in its entirety. Well, in fact, there'll be very little risk in that way to them.
It's the same as the Daventry State Company.
Well, it's not, because Daventry Tea Depot is wholly owned by the council. The company, the Daventry District Wellbeing Limited, is an entity in its own right that the council is owned. We're not a majority shareholder. There's no shares, and we are one of only 5 directors, and the company could continue without us being a director. So it's not the same as Tea Depot. We own Tea Depot, and we do their books.
Yeah, the same rules apply though to private limited companies. It gives you the flexibility to do what you see fit as director of the board without the influence of the council.
I think actually that there's probably a point here, isn't there, that needs understanding. So I think whatever happens at full council is making sure that's clearly understood by members. Tony,
the risks therefore are sitting with Daventry Wellbeing, who will appoint, they will contract the work to the various agencies. So they are carrying that risk as opposed to the council.
Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillors Warren and Hills for the presentation, and with the information available to them, I think they've done an extremely good job this evening. But I have to turn around and say, sitting here, I do get the impression that it's such a fluid situation at this moment in time that, to be perfectly honest, it's very difficult for me as a member to sit here and actually fully understand the parameters of where it's going, what it's doing, where, the outcome of this. And whilst I find the information interesting from a background point of view, I don't sit here feeling particularly confident at this moment in time that I know enough now, even now, about it to make decisions upon what it's going to do.
I think that there's a point here. So the question might be, will you feel more comfortable in 3 weeks' time or not, based upon where you are now? And this might give the team in front of us more focus on what they need to come back to before they get in front of a lot of us.
That, Chairman, is dependent upon how much more information comes their way, and that may not be the gift of the councillors, Maria, or anybody else, because the information hasn't come to them at that stage. If you were to ask me tonight to say, would you vote on this at full council, I would actually have to turn around and say, no, I can't, because I don't have enough information to do it. And unless there is substantial amount of information comes between now and full council, I will take exactly the same position. I'm not in a position to make a balanced decision because I don't know enough.
So there's a challenge there. Obviously, that's partly beyond your ability to control that, but certainly worth knowing in terms of coming back on.
That's the reason why, Chairman, I'm sorry, I did make the comment that I'm grateful for the information that's been provided to the very best of people's ability, but I don't think it's sufficient. Not through their fault, but simply because they likewise are not.
Don't have information. Let's take some more questions and comments.
Can I just
That's
ask
all
on that?
it's over to you,
One.
anyway, Councillor.
Oh, right. Because I'd follow on from that, because the one concern I would have, I think I've got enough information, and I'd say go ahead. The concern I have is being a councillor for too long, 20 odd years, and seeing the county council operate with other things. There could be smoke and mirrors right up till March, and the final details won't come until its very last minute. So I'd be quite happy, obviously if the decision's delegated at a point, or there could be a chance we go to February and we've still got more information coming forward. the concern I have is how well will the company be, because I accept the risk is going to be borne by the company. Obviously, if it's very late in the day, how do we get up and running for the 1st of April when we're supposed to be starting delivering? Because any confusion or problems there will damage the credibility of the company. And from that, I see there would be damage to the partners involved. The other question I have is, as much as I'm relieved that Councillor Over has chosen to be a company director, could Maria just highlight who the other directors are?
Certainly, thank you. Can you do that, please?
Try and get some picture as to which of the other organisations have got a stake on.
Everyone on the first page is a member,
Right.
except for DDH. They currently are not a member of the company, but they've not ruled themselves in, but they haven't ruled themselves out. They still consider themselves.
Maria, can we go back a
members of
second?
the
I think,
consortium.
are you talking about the 5 directors?
Yes,
Yeah. And then just to go on to...
So from those, a director, one of the directors is from Everyone Health, one is from Bromford, one is from Principal Medical Limited, and the other is from the Volunteer Centre.
Who's the chairperson? What's the constitutional arrangements?
There'll be a company secretary which will act in the role of chair. Until the company meets, the secretary hasn't been appointed. That's the last.
So the directors
behind on my
appoint
emails,
company
that's the last
secretary at the first
I've
meeting?
Could I on that particular issue, a question I did raise on that is if we have a company secretary, that company secretary will be a chartered secretary and well qualified, because there are, when you're doing the budget of £700 and something thousand times 4 years, and you're dealing with a great deal of money, and there are some legal implications of which I would believe that the people may be coming in, not least myself, and actually that may not well be qualified in terms of everything going gets rough. It seems to be full of great deal of aspiration, this, but it's going to do this, and maybe do this, that, and the other, and they think, but sorting this out, and actually, what are we actually going to do, and how are these funds and the services going to be proportioned? It's going to be a bit of a nightmare scenario, I suspect.
I think actually picking up on that, I think we saw from the last strategy group there's often no mood for too many variables, so that's how things lock down. And I wouldn't like to see you get into a situation where you're having to defend, like we did last strategy group, lots of issues that were open and really contentious. And I think taking on board that the devil is in the detail. I think we've already seen this evening only having one partner to manage in terms of aim has become complicated and protracted. We've got to a situation where we're happy to resign ourselves to red performance. So I think really there's a lot of detail to be had in the next 3 weeks before it would come back to forecast. That's entirely your choice, but that's from a pre-scrutiny perspective on the comments I think we've made.
Just to clarify, the report I'm expecting to write at the moment will be that we won't be in a position for the council to make a decision on the 4th of December. The decision I'll ask council for is to delegate that decision to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader, because it's going to be some time after 4th of December.
But I think the point is, Marie, you're still asking full council to make a vote for something.
Yeah.
And it's still about furnishing them with enough details that they feel confident even delegating them. Because we had the same debate, of course, with Eamon beyond closed doors and sessions. Let's move to Councillor Hills.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Maria said it for me, I was going to say that we're not asking, I shouldn't think that we'll be asking the full council to make a decision, because I don't think we will have the full information at that stage. One thing I would say about our partners, I do a lot of work in my portfolio role with the voluntary sector, etc. And I know that our health and well-being board, those that we got on board were very, very keen to take part. And that was gratifying, because I didn't, when I sat there, wanted to see people sort of press ganging and saying, yes, we're doing. There was a keenness there, and from some of our LSP partners. So I think, and I'm not aware that this has deteriorated, so I do feel fairly confident that our partners will support us in that. And, we need to have their backing for this consortium to work properly and to work well, because at the end, we could either be leaders as they asked us to be, or we could just be part of it, or we could be walking away from it.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's 3 decisions there that have to be made, and yeah, has and is been very difficult to, at times, to get information. We've now got a state to say there is an embargo on certain things that we're moving forward, but I'm distinctly hopeful that we can get more information through by the December full council. So that will give our members, which we should rightly be doing, much more information than we've currently got.
If I might, by way of illustration, for example, if Principal Medical Limited, if the company decides when it has its meetings and it decides how it's going to construct itself in its terms of reference and everything else and its own scheme of delegation, if the company decides that Principal Medical Limited are going to be given £200,000 to deliver health checks, then that will be they'll have made that decision based on looking at the options and making sure that that's affordable, and that the expectation is that they're going to meet the target of however many health checks need to be done in a year. There'll be performance monitoring in place, whether that's delivered by the council or some other body, some other partner, still to be decided. But ultimately, the company will hold the money from the county council, and the company will only be giving Principal Medical Limited the money for health checks in accordance with its performance. So if it doesn't perform, then the company would be in a position to say, actually, there's 6 other potentially tenders, contracts like this around the county. If our own partner's not able to do these health checks and we're underperforming, let's look a bit more widely and re-let that work, if you like, to some other delivery.
How does that example relate to our experience of Amy?
It's an entirely different beast. I mean, Amy took over a whole service. It's a statutory service, and it was, it's specified in its own way. The county council hasn't specified how you do it. It just specified you an end product. Ultimately, we can go through each element of this contract, and if the company has gone through each element and looked for the best price and talked to the best partners, and it gets to the end of that process, and we can't do what's required from the contract for £730,000, nobody will be signing the contract with NCC. So that's the difference, because none of, I think health checks to some degree are statutory, but everything else in this is about demand, reducing demand and preventing problems. Most of this is discretionary, but the county recognises that you invest in this discretionary area because actually down the line it will save us a fortune in adult social care and other services. And similarly, health are putting money in as well because they recognise if you help people get more active and get them jobs and they're less depressed and they're less fat and they're not smoking and they drink in a manner that's not going to upset their overall health, then actually it's going to save us a fortune down the line. So that's the thinking behind it.
Can I ask you, Jim? I think
Councillor not yet. Councillor Long's next.
Yeah. Sorry, just make a note.
Sorry,
I am ready. Sorry, Chair, I am ready. I understand where Maria's coming from, but I have to say, at this moment in time, if the recommendation is to go at full council is that the decision with regarding this matter is delegated both to the leader and to the chief executive, I find myself in a position again of not being able to vote for it. The reason being is that I am democratically elected by my residents to represent them in such matters, and at this moment in time, pending nothing else coming further forward, I am not in a position to say I'm happy for you to take that decision. I think that it's a sort of information or decision that should be taken by full council with all the information that's actually in front of it. And unless we get considerably more than we have at this moment in time, I would find it very difficult to vote for delegate it, because I would like to know more about something that I'm going to be involved in.
Noted, thank you. And it's a very important point to take away actually, but basically the point is it's not enough to say, well, we're going to give you some information then ask you to delegate, because you need more information even to know if that's the right thing to do.
But the company does need more information.
Of course.
We make
And
that
we
point
do
from
know
the
that.
outset. The council won't be making a decision on whether to, the council won't be taking the money from the county council for this contract. The decision whether or not to go ahead with this contract will be between the company and the county council, ultimately. I suppose the council's decision is the degree to which we're
Do we
engaged
play a
in the
role in
company.
that partnership? Absolutely,
Yes.
that makes sense. Let's go to Councillor over then, Tony.
I was just going to, what I was following a bit, I mean, a very persuasive argument from my view, and actually perhaps I know taking the healthcare, you tick all those boxes and say they're all very desirable things, but in actual fact we've got 3 targets here effectively to deal with, and it's a question of priorities, isn't it, again? You know, which ones do you give the priority to? In terms of the use of resources. Now, if this comes down, is this going to be you may be persuaded by all sorts of people chipping in saying, yes, but we can make a case for this, that and the other. At the end of the day, in terms of competence and making a decision about those, how to establish a priority, that seems to me to be a bit of a dodgy business from effectively people who, who are the best laid people, aren't we, in terms of these matters. I mean, perhaps we're not stupid,
No, I mean, I think it's probably, in response to your concerns, it's a good time to point out that we've only ever envisaged potentially being directly involved in a small part of the delivery of this contract. At this point in time, it looks very much like a lot of our key partners haven't got the contracts they were expecting to get elsewhere. So we're fully anticipating that actually some of the company's partners are going to be up for delivering even more of this contract. So actually, DDC is very, very unlikely to be putting any resources in or delivering anything directly. We've considered where it might be, for example, some of it might have been able to be delivered through care and repair. It's much more likely that the likes of Bromford and other partners are likely to be coming to us and saying, actually, we can do this aspect. We're doing it in 4 or 5 different parts of the council, of the county, and we can do it for this price. So, the council itself is going to have a role in steering and enabling this to happen if it remains part of the company, but it's going to be up to the company to decide which way to deliver each aspect of the service. And it will be able to change its mind, and it will be able to closely monitor whether stuff's being delivered as it should be. It's a very different concept. It's not something we've been involved in before, but we haven't bid to deliver a DDC have not bid to deliver a £730,000 brand new service. I frankly would never have got involved in any such a thing. All we've done is glue together a consortium, and that has become an entity in its own right. And now, that negotiation needs to go on between the company and the county council, and it will involve discussions with various partners to see what the best way of delivering this is. And even if it is deliverable, it's still going to be questionable, because until we know what's happening county-wide, whether there are any economies of scale, for example, if there are providers out there who are in a good position to do all of the house checks for the entire county, we need to talk to them, because they might be a more viable option than what we had considered as a company before we put our tender in.
Thank you. Stop, Councillor, over 1 minute actually.
Who are the we's?
The consortium.
Yeah, thank you. Tony, did you have a comment to make as well?
I did. Maria's already made part of what I was wanting to say, but I think it's useful just to go back to the context. This has all come around because the county council has changed, or is proposing to change, the way it delivers these services in our communities, to the residents of the district. What we have done as a council has become involved through discussions, through lobbying from the LSP, who see us as a facilitator in this process. So they've asked us to take the lead thus far in terms of setting up the company, which is the one and only decision. Well, the second decision was about submitting a bid, but those are the only decisions that have been made. What we need to be mindful of is, if we want to influence the outcome of delivery of these services to the residents within our district, then the opportunity to do that is being involved in this project. And I think that's the context of the council's involvement in this. And as Maria's said, the decision that members will be asked to delegate potentially is what level is the council's involvement, as opposed to we are not going forward and signing up a contract for 730,000 or
I mean, I only suggested it would be a delegated, a request for a delegation, because right now I don't know what the county's deadline is. They haven't spoken to us at all.
We are in
If
this
it
very...
fits with a council meeting, it will go to a council meeting.
Of course, thank you. And thank you, Maria. And I was going to say, we are in this very interesting period. One of our ambitions as a committee is to do some pre-scrutiny. Now, the point is to pre-scrutiny is a lot of variables, and we do appreciate that. But part of this, in the time allocated, is about the thinking process, and actually, hopefully, it will help you as a team to understand what the kind of questions will be. And at least you might have some advocates in some respects. Councillor Patchett has been sitting here very quietly and very patiently, so let's come to him. I think he's got a question.
Yeah, with regards to the screen, the slide on the screen now, you mentioned 512 weight management courses. Is this a course of how many people? Two people? Courses of 10 people? I mean, what was there any? And the 50 stop smoking courses as well. I mean, are we envisaging a number of people as a key area of delivery?
I think that's the actual number of people that will be expected to go through courses. So those numbers at the beginning of each bullet. So they want 3,200 people to have gone through a health check.
Well, I understand that, but a weight management course, I mean, it could be a course of 10 people, it could be a course of one person.
Depends on the size of the room, surely.
Yeah, but I mean, are we planning on getting 5,000 people to stop smoking over there? I mean,
No, it's just
to be ridiculous.
It's 50 people put through a stop smoking course.
If I can highlight, because I've had experience of some of these courses recently.
Yeah.
I went on a stop smoking course, which was at the GP surgery.
Yeah.
I stopped for 4 months, and that I think it's costed the NHS probably considerably more than what I've done in national insurance in the last 12 months. That's the lighter side.
Yeah.
But these weight management courses can just be half an hour with a nurse, just talking through. Some can be diet. I actually went on a course which was for diabetes, managing diet, and that was only a 2-hour course, and there was 12 people on that.
Well,
so I think
my point
it
really
depends.
was that it doesn't define whether that's 500 people or 500 times 10 people.
No, it's 500 people.
Okay,
That's
fine.
one of the.
In which case, that's really very not good value for money.
It's an interesting point. I think this comes down to the management, doesn't it? How you're going to deliver in terms of what you need to do. Can I go over to Councillor Long, who's got a question there?
Well, it's not so much just a question, Chair, but it's sort of taking on board once again. I go back to Maria's point about this is a new concept. I mean, if I go back and put on my old hat as being a county councillor, the principle of enabling and prevention actually came to a fore, I think Alan will agree, during actually the latter end of the last county council last county council term. I mean, the leader Jim Harper as leader of the county council, actually in response to cutbacks in government grants, actually made a comment very early into the last council that effectively the county council would have to cease being a service provider, would have to engage with the voluntary community, and in fact would actually have to enable the voluntary community to deliver what previously the county council had delivered. And this was it is actually a way of actually trying to, I'd hate to put it this way, getting some of the work that the county did before that it was paying for done for nothing, or done at half the price it was doing before. Yeah. That's the enabling part of it. And the second part, prevention. This is something which again had very there was no defined boundaries. I mean, the problem was where do you stop with prevention? Mm-hmm. Prevention covers many areas, and even 18 months ago, when I ceased to be a county councillor, the definitions of that actually hadn't been put in place. It was still rolling on. I mean, DACT, for example, an area that I supported, is that prevention. does that roll under it? And ultimately it was getting towards that. So I come back to a point where I maintain that at the end of this, it goes back to the comments that the leader of the county council made, that the county council would become an enabler as opposed to being a service deliverer. It was going to have to do this with the voluntary sector actually taking up for nothing, or for, if you like, what the county was paying 100% for. They'd be going to volunteers and saying, here is 50%,
Yes.
can you deliver that? So it was a voluntary contribution towards it. Now,
So this is the rationale in council, which does make perfect sense.
That's the rationale behind it. But I don't, again, you see, at this moment in time, until somebody puts down the defined parameters as to what Maria is saying, effectively, what are we trying to deliver? Where is it going to be delivered? A lot more defined than we are at the moment. We're still almost in this area of fluidity.
Absolutely. Can I come in actually as use chair's privilege before we get on some more questions? I think that there's from the presentation that we have had, I would suggest that it's not entirely well articulated. Even we've been able to augment it even with the position of the district council. I don't think that's particularly clear in there. We've got the why the council is involved, but we haven't defined how the council is involved. And again, I would suggest even if you were to do this presentation tomorrow, you'd have really been able to clarify the company, the role of the district council, some of the options, and also I think to pick up Councillor Long's point, some of the background context in terms of why the county's got to do this. Now, I guess you could even take some of these back to 2010, the big society agenda, etc., and they're kind of offset. Before I come to you, Councillor Perry, I've got a couple of hands up first. So I've got Councillor Hills. You look like you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to follow up and say that all the way through, the county council has been talking, right since the very first day it started, commissioning and prevention, enabling, and that's been the theme all the way through.
Yeah.
I myself, while I've been keen for us as a district council to take part, I certainly don't feel that we should be left out.
Why?
Because I think that when we look at the strength, we've got the strength in knowing the local area and some advantage over some of the others. And I was concerned that if somebody from outside or something like that came in at the time, that if things went wrong, then we as a council may be asked to pick up the pieces. And that I didn't want. But I certainly wanted us to be involved from the start to look and see how we get on and what we propose. And I understand where Councillor and others are. It's frustrating in as much as I said, there isn't more detail. I'm hopeful that we will have some by December, but I think it's going to go into the new year until we get the full detail. And it leaves us as portfolio holders, in a way, something in the lurch, as it does Maria.
Of course. Before I come to those questions, I've got some more lined up. I mean, there's an interesting point that Councillor Long makes in terms of the risk. There's a risk for the county council here if you can't get these services away, and therefore you really are relying on this, particularly councils at our level actually being able to play this facilitative role. So actually, I mean, when we're looking at the risk equation, you could actually end up with a situation where nobody wanted to pitch for the work.
But Chairman, just to add to that, you made the comment about smoke and mirror, or the comment of smoke and mirrors.
I think, yeah.
And but I take that on board. It helps what is going to be expected to be delivered within this contract for the amount of money. It could go right to sort of the 31st of March.
Well, that's what's on those, basically, what's on those slides, pathways 1, 2 and 3,
Yeah.
that's what's specified in the council contract. So we need to get, the company would need to specify to them how it was going to deliver each pathway and at what cost.
Before we
Sorry, could I just answer that point from Rick? I take your point and I accept that, but I look upon the information there as a skeleton.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a lot of flesh to be put on that skeleton, and you won't know exactly what needs to be done for each part until that has been put there. So, if the county council could leave to the very last minute exactly what it determines on that, which could make a lot of difference to the way in which you deliver this.
I think the tender document was 80 pages, and we've gone into some detail about how we would anticipate delivering each pathway with each potential partner, and at what kind of indicative cost. So there is more detail behind that, but that wasn't something that
But then,
that's fixed, and so therefore wasn't something that I could
But then,
bring to you
sorry,
today.
Chairman, if you
Please.
come back to the point why this started, an enabling council trying to deliver services with a much reduced budget, it could be that it won't be determined until you get to the very end as to what they want to deliver, because they don't know themselves how much money they're going to have to actually deliver other areas themselves. So they might wish to offload more into that as part of that putting the flesh onto the bone. That's the bit that concerns me. You could land up seeing more coming than you're actually aware of.
The county council have indicated that they're expecting to do more work with health, and the preferred bidders, the people that win the tender are likely to be offered first refusal on more contracts under the health and wellbeing agenda as they come through.
Thank you. Let's go to Councillor Randall, who's again been patient.
Yeah, I'm just looking at those, like the health checks, the weight management, the smoking. At the moment, they're all delivered by your GP. So is that being taken away from the GP?
Yeah, it's about pooling. Yeah, the money's being pooled.
Okay.
Because that side was actually transferred last year from the health service to under the public health agenda. It's gone to the county council, so it's Akeem Ali's budgets are included in this.
So, and what about, like, they're all supposed to, like, the GPs are all calling people in now for their healthy heart check?
Yeah.
Is that the same? So
Yeah,
is that being
and they're
pulled
doing
through
that
as well,
because Northamptonshire NHFT, Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, which is a very small group, they were set up 18 months ago. They're part of the health service, but they're fully funded by supporting people currently. They were set up to do health checks across the entire county, and they haven't been delivering. So they've had a lot of money to deliver, thousands of health checks across the county, and they haven't been delivering, which is another reason why this is all being wrapped up together as part of an overall package.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Thank you. Is there a risk here actually that there'll be an overall, sorry Councillor, is there an overall risk here there'll be an overall deterioration of services? Will there be a potential reputational impact for us?
Well, they're commissioning entirely different services. I mean, this will be the first time. I mean, currently health checks happen, but weight management courses, stop smoking courses, I think they've, as far as I'm aware, most of them are up to the local GPs. There's not like a county, and they're certainly not currently funded through NCC, pooling budgets.
So this is not a like-for-like?
No, so they're doing something different, but the better examples are probably on the social well-being. So this is this is going to be about encouraging volunteering and helping people set up lunch clubs in villages and a whole huge range of things that the supported people funding has never been used for, but they recognise nevertheless that actually if you get a core of things, if you work with people like Age Concern who do lunch clubs in 10 villages already, and you can make that happen in 30 villages, that you're actually going to have an awful lot less people feeling like lonely and isolated at home, and having falls and not being found and that sort of thing. So this is a very different looking thing. At the moment they're doing things like paying for Bromford floating support, and there's no such Bromford floating support. It most close link is to that, but it's certainly not coming under the guise of housing related support. It's actually much more generic, and rather than providing one-to-one, it might be about training someone else to be able to help more people.
Thank you.
I think it's worth stating, as I said within the presentation, it is a major shift. It's a different type of service than what's been offered before, and that's where obviously you're going to have some things that have been offered before, but there's also some areas that will be different from what's been offered before.
That's why it's a consortium with the community and voluntary sector, who are doing this in pockets all over the county. But this is about having a concentrated effort and being able to deliver that in a consistent way.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got some more comments. Councillor Over, I keep muting you, so I'll let you have a...
No, quite at all. In terms of, I'm intrigued by the board of directors, and I can see that these services that once provided by the county are now going to be sort of put out in a different way. It seems a bit strange to me. Why don't they just remit these back to the county? The county says, here, we'll sign the checks, and then actually get on with it. Don't come crying to us. In terms of this board of directors, what is the board of directors actually going to do? I mean, they're not going to be decision makers, are they? Are they just there to watch the budget?
No, I think it's that the company, through its board of directors, will be deciding. Assuming it goes ahead, the board of directors will be making decisions at the beginning and every year. Okay, we've let this part of the contract.
Would that not have been the two chairman? Would that be exactly the role that the county council were doing? And they were making decisions like that, were they not? So why are they transferring it to a board of directors who are non-professional in these matters?
Well, the board of directors is made up of professionals.
Well, I know there are some, but what I'm trying to say is that there are. It's got a few bunch of amateurs in it.
To dovetail Councillor's question there, the question I have fundamentally is about resource. And whilst you may have 5 directors, do you actually have any operational staff to actually do a lot of the assessment that we spoke of? I don't mean the actual service delivery, I mean about the coherence aspects of
within the bid, I can't remember the exact figure, but there's about 100k. We've indicated that is the likely cost of the core, staffing of, to do the monitoring and everything else.
And that would be that's somebody from the district council?
Not necessarily.
No,
it may well be that one of the other partners, we will consider the various options. It may be that one of the other partners says, we'll hold the finances, we'll provide.
What about running up to this? Because we've got these lovely words, meat on bones, blah, blah, blah. What about running up to it? We've got one of the questions here. What happens next? Can the company deliver the contract for the funding available? How will you determine that between now and signing the contract? This will be on the slides I've numbered, but penultimate slide. So that point there in bold. So, Councillor, as you said, this is one of the questions we've got. How are you going to answer that question between now and then with 5 directors and no staff?
Well, all the partners, the company is made up of these 5 directors. The whole company also includes the likes of Aid Concern and so on, and there will be lots of detailed discussions with people who are employed by the various partner companies to determine, for example, Bromford Sport might be coming forward and saying, right, well, we can deliver that part of the contract and that part of the contract. The company will be having to look at the different options and determine that.
In terms of ordering authorities, I mean, everyone can obviously say, we believe that we can make a case for this, but it's this business about ordering authorities. And I look at those things about, the emphasis on smoking and health checks. Of course, everyone that's the best thing to do, but other people will play into the other thing. We've got
if we go ahead and we accept this, it will be an expectation that we will deliver all of those things that I've
sorry, Maria, the point is, let me use Chairman's word. The question is, that activity is taking place now, I trust, is it?
Well, we've got
that evaluation, is it taking place now, and if so, who is doing it and who is coordinating?
Well, it will start from tomorrow when there's
hence, today being the 11th, getting some feedback, so how will that take place? What will trigger that tomorrow?
Well,
what kind of things will happen?
People in my team will be talking to people from Bromford and everyone health and so on. There's a lot of things to be discussed, but I can't give you any more detail because there is no more detail at the moment. But a lot of work went into putting the bid together, so we've got some indicative pathways and some indicative costs, and people have got an idea that it's going to take so many members of staff to deliver so many health checks or whatever in a year, and where they're going to be focusing that and how they're going to target that and how they're going to work with GPs and so on. So a lot of that work has happened, but now it's time to put it all together. We need, like I said, it says earlier in the slides, we need to understand the landscape, because clearly several of our partners were part of bids or led their own bids elsewhere in the county. Right now, I don't know if they've won them, if they're involved in winning bids, or if they're not. We have not officially been told anything about any of that. We need to understand, are they still interested? Can they still do it for the sort of cost? Their costs might have gone up or down depending on whether they're...
Remind me, what's the deadline to have that piece of work done? So at what point will we understand if we can deliver according to the
We were only told today by the County Council that there's been no challenge to ours, and in that email it says we'll be in touch with you to talk about the next steps and deadlines and so on. So we literally don't know. All we know at this point in time is if the company decides to sign up and go ahead with the contract, it's due to start 1st of April.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
I just wanted to make a comment, Chairman. We keep coming back to, and I know Maria doesn't know any more beyond what we've told, obviously, but I must admit, having been a director of quite a number of companies over the last 20 years, and being a director now, I've got in some detail to the responsibilities and liabilities taken on board if you sign to become a director of a company. I have to say, at this present moment in time, with taking on board directors for what we're doing here, presumably the liability that this particular company effectively will ultimately lie with the 5 directors. There's a liability in there. I must admit, at this moment in time, I would find it very difficult to sign any document at a company's house that said I'm going to be a director of something which, frankly, I don't know what it's all about and where the responsibilities would lie. I think there's got to be it's a very delicate position to be in for the people concerned.
Thank you,
and that would worry me.
Councillor Perry, you've been raising questions this time.
Yeah, well, it's sort of some comments. I mean, I go back to the full council meeting, and I'm sort of in favour of it to a degree. But we've been down this road before because prior to this we had supported people. Now, I was involved as the portfolio holder when that was done, and it's exactly the same time scales. We do nothing until the last minutes, and there were things going on. The one thing you can be rest assured is it's only being done to save money, like supporting people was. There was a different thread with supporting people because it was about service equalisation. So if our wardens were dearer than the wardens in East Northants, the supporting people board looked at it and they said we're not going to pay any more than this. So somebody's service was cut to bring up somebody else's service across the county. That's how that worked, and it saved money. We're now in the position now you've got a different entity, and Councillor Hills is quite right, because before there was no process of the supporting people board really being accountable, and we as the council then bore the brunt of some of their decisions. We would get queried, why did we cut our warden service? Well, we thought we provided value for money, but it was dearer than, say, the borough council. But you're not comparing like for like, a rural area against a area. Now, I fully expect, I can't see there being enough detail until at least March.
I think it will be a bit sooner than March.
Well, I will say you're optimistic. I know what the county council was like. But what I will say is...
We're meant to be professional sceptics on this committee at some point.
You can be rest assured it's about saving money.
Yeah.
The county council are doing it because I know they said at the time when I was at the DDH board meeting that it's not a 2p contract, so there isn't an obligation then on the county council. Obviously the company we set up, and it's only right and proper that as a district council, and we have some of these services which will be involved, like care and repair, and we have targets, we have our targets under public health and the things we used to do under that we're in there getting what's right for our people, because at the end of the day what happened with supporting people, you have these decisions, we bore the brunt because everyone blamed Daventry Council. Now, we know there's going to be less money, that's between the county, the government, whatever. We're here, and one thing will be rest assured you can guarantee on, that what services we got now will be changed. They will be looked at, they might be run more economically, there might be a different emphasis. And there's certainly an emphasis on health prevention, because they see that being the panacea to the wider costs of the NHS and the association there. And it's how we as a council have a part, and I can see us, you know, we were in there influencing, we're not committed to running any of the services, we're there committing and making sure through the board of directors, etc., that what we're getting is fit for purpose for our residents, and we can monitor it and see. And I think we can monitor the board, because there's no reason, if we're one of the partners on it, we can't ask them to come to the S9.
I think, Councillor Perry, that's the point here. It goes back to the defining the district council's role quite clearly, and I think that's what we expect when it comes to council. So we're really fully cognizant of what it is we're expected to do, and therefore understand our exposure and our liabilities. And Councillor Perry, can I start with that? So I'm a bit conscious of time. We've got probably a couple of minutes left in this debate before we move on the agenda. I knew there was an appetite to discuss this from the last council meeting. Councillor Patrick, I think you had probably a couple of comments, did you?
No, I think...
Don't comment if you don't have to, but
no,
if you do, please do.
No, I think it's covered what I was going to say, actually.
Thank you. Councillor Over, did you have another comment?
No, I don't. No, I think it's been a useful contribution from my colleague getting this into perspective. I think if it is that we will get reports going back to the board by experts who say, I believe that the quality of this service being offered and it's cost effective, and we're asking the board to take a decision to appoint it to X, Y, Z on that basis, then assuming that we can understand those reports, particularly on medical issues or mental health issues in particular, then I can, if there is that demarcation, when I was obviously elected myself as a company, and I full practice of work, and it was something information provided that allowed you to make decisions. If it's on that basis, it works. It will work all right. What I'm worried about is I don't want to see board members, as it were, getting involved in decisions that are not grounded with good, sound professional advice. And that was my concern. I think you understood that.
I do.
Thank you.
I think, Councillor Over, it's very refreshing that you've been able to come to Scrutiny Committee to understand more about the role you've accepted on this organisation.
To be fair, we haven't been to a single meeting. This is a fresh out of the oven appointment.
This committee, they've got the screws on people and people.
Well, I don't think we've really started this one yet, but thank you.
I'm afraid we are.
Can I ask a couple of questions, actually? In terms of the fact-finding mission, are there any... Thank you. Are there any other exemplars that you can look at from other authorities across the country? Any lessons you can learn of the way they've implemented and structured these particular relationships?
All we've been able to find out really so far is that there's quite a few counties going through very similar processes, but at this point in time I'm not aware of any that have already done it. So it's a shame no one's a year ahead of us, but certainly there's some most West Midlands and Birmingham and other local authorities are going through very similar process.
And what can you do to learn from their experiences?
Well, I mean, that's actually been very useful to have Romford as one of our partners, because of course they've got interest in many different local authorities across the country. But we're willing to learn from anyone really, both in my professional role at DDC and in my role in supporting, providing information to the company. So
it's the quality of that information that will make the board work effectively.
Yeah, and I think it's important. There's this board overarching, but how the governance will work is still to be decided by the company. They may well say, do you know what, once a year we'll do a report to S&I. That is something that is bound to be discussed when we have the next meeting. The other important thing is all the partners pledge, without charging anyone, that we bring the sum of our parts to the company. So if that means members of my team are part of evaluating various options and getting us to the next stage so that the company can make a decision, then that's what we're all doing. So because you asked earlier how this is going to be resourcing between now and from April onwards, and what's delivered is going to be funded by the county council. We will be able to get some funding back to cover any actual costs, but all of the different partners are contributing in kind to making this happen, because between us, for various reasons, we're all committed to influencing what happens. We weren't involved, DDC weren't involved at all in this, because this supporting people had two aspects, children's side and adults. We weren't involved in the children's side, and I think it's fair to say that it's been discussed many times at council that we're kind of powerless and we've had no influence whatsoever on what's going on there, and now there's more consultation coming out about yet more changes. Since I think this contract was getting on for a year ago, and as professionals, as as operational managers, my team and the frontliners, we've got very little engagement and understanding of what's happening. This will, if nothing else, be a very useful way for all of our frontline services to have one, better engagement with our key partners anyway, and two, real opportunity to influence how this £730,000 is going to be spent and making a difference in our district. So that's the driver for being involved at this point in time. But
and I think in that respect there are a couple of things when we go forward to that council.
Yeah.
It's about principles and implications, I think, in particular.
Yeah.
But how does, a couple more questions from actually, how does this line up with our corporate plan in terms of our objectives? Are there clear overlaps
Yeah.
and a line of sight between, and can those be articulated as well in due course? So actually when you come to full council say, you know, this relates to this element of our corporate plan, this will help us to achieve that. I think that's very clear,
Yeah,
particularly
make sure
from
that
you as
happens,
corporate
yeah.
orders. The other thing is actually there's been increasing concern in the last couple of weeks, and there's this very high-profile incident where there was the cannibal in Wales that basically took the girl and basically demolished her head. And I think this is because of some lapses in mental well-being. It sounds funny, but I don't think anybody sees it's quite a serious
Yeah, it's
issue.
awful. Started really.
Cannibalism, nothing to laugh at. But so there's a real reputational issue there, particularly I think. And again, I was coming in today. There's some other issues in Wales. I mean, is there a possibility a couple of years down the line we're going to be in that situation?
I think I can give reassurances on that. One thing I can be quite confident and assertive on is this is nothing to do with getting involved in crises. So community mental health will carry on being community mental health. Adult social services will carry on being involved in those high-profile cases. If I refer you to the mental well-being slide, it makes it really very clear that it is expectation. The expectation is that we're at the lower level end. I mean, there's, you know, we're not. The community well-being services is not about dealing with people in crisis. Those, you know, health sector and social services will most certainly remain responsible for that. This is about, you know, getting in a long time before that happens. So
can you articulate those risks have been well considered and that they are isolated? It really occurred to me as I was listening to this discussion on Radio 4 that you know, so a couple of years down the line, how do we isolate ourselves from these kind of particular issues? So I think it's one of these. One of the points that Councillor Hill's made was about mitigating issues. I think risk and actually why is the council involved? Risks understood and mitigated, the bullet point says. So it's really about articulating that very clearly so you can deal with those challenges. I for one personally as a member would not want to see us exposed to those kind of issues or any issues in this area and basically ruin the reputation of the district council. I think they have to be well considered, whatever they are, and not downplayed. Does anyone have any further questions? I think we need to wrap this discussion up. No. Councillor Hills, Councillor White, anything, final comments from you?
No, I think everything's been covered very thoroughly. I was a bit concerned about having the debate and over the fact that a lot of the information was embargoed, but I have to say that having attended, I think it's been very useful. And to say it's a pity in some ways that we can't dot more I's and cross more T's, but hopefully that we will have more information in the future.
Thank you, Councillors. I think in some respects it isn't a pity because in actual fact you've got a bullet point there that says can the company deliver the contract for the funding available, and I think we've been able to pressure on that today, and it's certainly my intention as the chair of this committee that we'll be doing more of this scrutiny as well going forward and having some of these debates and discussions up front rather than running into another situation like I've got at Anger later. So if nobody's got any further questions for the team, please consider yourself dismissed unless you want to stand and enjoy the debate. You might want to go quick while you're ahead. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming. Hopefully food for thought ahead of the council meeting.
yes, I've got lots of notes, and I'll make sure they're incorporated.
Thank you. So we'll let them make their way out. Thank you very much indeed. So, thank you everybody. That's item 5 on the agenda. We've given that plenty of time for discussion. Hopefully that's warranted the level of discussion, hopefully given some ideas, and hopefully given the team some ideas.
It does worry me, Chairman, that the County Council are very slippery with these things, and they might be asking for twice as much for half as much. And so on, but, we'll have to see what information.
I think perhaps council actually the conclusion is we need to be vigilant. Just because they've got council after them doesn't mean they should automatically be trusted in these dealings. But that would go for anybody who should be dealing
If
with.
they've got county councillors, they most definitely shouldn't be trusted.
I could possibly. You might stand up, but I could possibly comment. Let's move on to item 6.
Can you just hand over the mouse thing and I'll switch this off?
Thank you, Tony. The number 6 item here is the effectiveness and improvement of the Scrutiny improvement operations. For those of you that attended strategy group, the last strategy group, was an interesting rough and tumble. We had a whole range of issues, but I think for me the substantive issues were we had two pieces of work leave this committee. I think we'd had a great debate about them, shaping them, etc., giving them a lot of scrutiny before they left. And it was certainly my feeling at that strategy group meeting. I used the word to be mangled. I think at one point I used some looking mirrors. No, quite frankly, I was disappointed on behalf of the committee. I think perhaps because of the nature of strategy group and obviously want to look like an aligned council, I think perhaps actually there's some learning for me. I think I probably got a little bit excited, but I was quite passionate about standing up for our committee. However, having said that, I have had a meeting with actually our leader, Councillor Miller, and it was meant to be with Ian Vincent, but unfortunately, as you know, he's not well. So we met up with Tony and also Maria and said, what is there a process issue that we have as a committee whereby we perhaps hadn't really marshalled it through to its conclusion at strategy group. Now, I'd like to draw your attention here to the model which we agreed a while back, which is in your pack. This document here. It says page 13 and 27. Now, in that model, basically, which we built, which reflected the way we operate, if you look at the last couple of points at the bottom, once the document leaves here, the SMI recommendations go to SMT. Really, at that point, that marks the boundary of our activity. But what actually happened in the meeting we had, when it got to the strategy point, two things. Councillor Over will know because he was actually bringing one of the items forward for rural transport. And by the way, I do not want to get into specific topics tonight. This is more overall operations. But there was that particular debate which took place. But the other debate was actually with the portfolio holder for communications. Of course, the communications portfolio holder was not present, so really unable to defend the recommendations. That didn't actually help in some respects, and I think that probably created more of a rumbustious situation. But the learning, I think, was this, and that is that my personal comments were perhaps I should have done more earlier before it gone to the actual meeting to discuss it. But then, if you have a look how we've defined our workflow, I said there'll be no opportunity for me as our chairman to actually get involved at that point. However, what we agreed yesterday, at least in principle, just really past you now, was that before it actually got to strategy, the recommendations from our committee, once it had been through the discussions with the SMT and the portfolio holder, that it would then come back to me for a sense check, if you like, really saying, does this set of recommendations that we're going to strategy with meet the spirit of what you had in mind, basically? In other words, is it pretty well aligned? I mean, because what we said we had the problem with was there were issues that we couldn't see how they'd gone through the mangle, as I kept describing it as. On one of the documents, you could very well articulate, you could see a line of sight where you had, this is what's recommended, this is basically the position on it, and this is the final recommendation. So I think there was two things in there really that came. Well, there's actually 3 recommendations that we had from our discussion yesterday, which I'll tell you about, and we can sign up to those if you will. The first one that was that we should have that extra step in the process whereby it comes back to me before it goes actually to strategy for final approval. So when we actually have it, we don't have that kind of debate because that's done beforehand. We've got that ironed out so it's smoother. That's number one. The second one is that in the tables that go to strategy, we actually see what the recommendation was and what the final outcome was. and the rationale for any difference. The third one was really for us about how we construct our assignment panels, really about making sure there's a robust team on there, not too big so it doesn't get done, but maybe not always twos and ones and twos. But that may be something which we can look at in more detail for each particular panel in terms of their timeliness. So let me refocus on the top two, which was when it goes to strategy group, the paper that you see will have the line of sight. So you have original recommendations, discussion, basically the findings and why the final recommendation has been made. And the second one, which just comes back to me as chair of the committee to have a quick look at. So really that was the improvements we want to discuss and put forward from conversations we've had. Are we willing to adopt those as performance improvement for our own committee? Discuss some comments. Yes, Randall.
Yes.
Sorry.
How will that discussion come back with the chair of the task panel?
It's a good question, and it was one we discussed yesterday actually in our meeting, Councillor Randall. I think if you were to, I think you probably have to trust that since I would be, the chair of the Scrutiny Committee would be acting on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee, that they would understand the scoping document and the recommendations well enough in order to be able to put a reasoned case to the portfolio order. So, I mean, we could have a conversation very quickly about it, but I think to make it a quicker, slicker exercise, the chairman will be acting on your behalf. In this case, obviously for me.
Which, you, Colin, depends on what chair you've got at that time. It could be, that you're obviously, work really well with these documents and know about them. What about if it come to a point where we had a new chair who had, no experience perhaps in this and didn't handle it the same way? Would there be an opportunity for, once you've met with the SMT, to then have a meeting with the chair of that task panel to go over with them so they're comfortable with those changes, or not?
I think basically the point is, it's a valid question. Basically, I think it's down to trusting the chair of the committee, and if the chair of the committee is clearly not actually, basically, if you were to find a situation where the committee chair was rolled over on every occasion, then I think you'd have to take that up with the chair of the committee and basically not doing their job properly. But in terms of, I mean, if it was, let's just say hypothetically, if it was me, which of course it is at the moment, you would have that situation whereby I would look at it, and if it was very close to what was there originally, you could probably say, yeah, that was the spirit of what it was, and I understand the recommendations. If there was a great deal of concern, I could very quickly go back and say, let's have a quick conversation. Because of the time of this, I wouldn't propose that we set up a meeting, blah, 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 because then it could just get lost. It just had a big step to the process. If you look at where we've had other recommendations go forward, generally they're being very well adopted and accepted. The idea is, for me, the philosophical point is, and this goes back to some of the debate we've had on the email with Councillor Patchett, etc. Sorry, not Patchett, Frenchman. Is just because it comes from scrutiny and improvement doesn't mean it should get adopted. And I believe that because, again, if you didn't have sensible people on scrutiny improvement, then you could have all sorts of weird and wacky, wonderful things come out. And it could be, it could be anything. So I think there has to be a sense checking in there about the implications for implementation. So I think you have to build it not in terms, like you say, not building it around what we are, but what could happen in the future. So I think, a reasonable chair would have that conversation with you and say, I've got this back. This is what it looks like. What do you think as well? And I think that's about teamwork more than anything.
Would it not be better to have the SMT look at it at the scoping point? Because then, actually, they look at the scope, and actually looking at that scope and what we've got in there, actually feeding into them at that point, they then might come up to the point like, that I've met with Tony, and Tony will give me feedback, and it may be that actually, you're looking down the wrong avenue. You go look here. This may help you. Or
I think there are two things here. I think there is the involvement we can have with the senior management team as you build scoping documents, you go through the process. But we need to look very specifically at the recommendations, because by that time you've been through all that sense checking. And unless it's complete lunacy, when it leaves, you'd expect it to be adopted. but if it's not adopted, to have a clear set of reasons why it's not adopted. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. The scoping document, yes, but why we're really focusing our attention is the recommendation, because that is the tangible document that goes through to strategy and we get voting at the strategy committee. So really what I'm saying is there's an extra step that we don't have currently that will help facilitate the process so that we have more opportunity for success in our ideas making attraction. Councillor Padgett.
Yeah, you have to excuse me for playing catch up a bit here, but what you're saying is a recommendation left this committee. It's then been changed by SMT and or the portfolio holder, which was why it ended up with something different at scrutiny.
Yeah, essentially. Strategy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I do apologise. Yeah, that was
So that's what I understand you're saying, and what you're saying is that before it actually goes to strategy, you want to have another look at it to see why it's been changed or not.
Yeah, just as a matter. Well, actually, I mean, started off as a matter of courtesy, but actually as a technical point, so you don't have a big forum at the strategy group meeting, where you know you get your chair of scrutiny going mad because it looks totally different. It looks like we wasted our time, and we haven't been listened to. And the whole point of the scrutiny and improvement is that obviously we've looked at things, we've got serious heads of the issue, and we've come out with half sensible recommendations. And that's why the other side of the coin is not only about having that quick consolidation, but also about saying this is what you proposed, this is what the kind of sense around this particular issue is, resource, etc., practicalities, and this is the final recommendation. And this should look at least half similar.
My question is why is the portfolio holder being allowed to first of all to change a recommendation from this committee?
Let Tony, you've got a comment on this.
Yeah, I'm just uncomfortable about the language about changing recommendations, because it is not about changing recommendations.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to understand. So
yeah.
It's a fair point, because the recommendation actually doesn't change, it stands.
Yeah.
But it's the strategy implications.
When the report leaves S&I, it goes to SMT, who will draft the report, which ultimately will go to strategy group and be presented by the portfolio holder.
okay.
What the SMT report is, or strategy group report as it becomes, is a response to those recommendations. So, and I think the point was made earlier that there may be recommendations that are shaped at S&I, which are not thought to be sensible in the council's interest, and therefore there will be a response which wouldn't necessarily endorse that recommendation going through. It's not about changing recommendations. You know, officers do not change the recommendations that leave here. We will craft something to respond to those recommendations.
Thank you, Tony. It's a fair point, and that's the point. Is it's putting pure layperson's language. If it left here, it's completely bonkers, because of course it could be completely bonkers. You then expecting the council to implement craziness. Yeah. And we're not saying they are crazy. I mean, this is the point about this one. I didn't think some of the recommendations. I thought some of the recommendations were very grounded, but it's because they didn't get. There's no operator, so it gets lost by the time it gets to strategy group. That was my concern. And the bigger picture was if, and I think Councillor Campbell in one of her emails summed up this very well. We don't have here toothless in this situation, so we want to appear that the work we do has merit. We've analysed things properly and rigorously, and we have sensible recommendations that have a standard chance of being implemented. So that was the point. So really, these two solutions were very simply about keeping it on track, or at least understanding other issues. Now, the question would be, if we had a situation whereby the portfolio order and the SMT presented something before strategy and said, this is what it's going to be like, and it's got very little to do with what you presented, and there was no way we could negotiate a way around that, then I think we'd have a fight at the strategy group. I'd be fully prepared for that. But it prevents some of that happening, so we look more aligned, and it's been a seamless process.
Yeah, can I just ask one more thing? So at the moment, it leaves here, goes to SMT. SMT do their, because you always have the report as it was and how SMT have, you know, we put it together in another format. And then, what input does the portfolio holder have in that? Because obviously, it's under his role. Is his only role delivering a new report, or has he actually met with the SMT to speak about how they've redrafted something?
Well, let's ask you a question, because you have a portfolio holder sat next to you, so let's ask you.
Yes, in terms of what I try to do, I can't speak for the portfolio. That certainly is a question that I have an interview and discuss these things with the particular person who Simon asked. frequently. I listen occasionally, and it's a lot of it will be standing in for it on one or two issues. And takes up these, let's get this advice right on the rest of it. And so that is, yes, the way it works. And in terms of the problem, I think was about rural transport, which are going into the detail here. What bothered me is that not the recommendations from strategy group, but in actual fact the supporting material didn't seem to me read like mumbo jumbo, effectively. And I think that's what.
Which is a fair point here. So actually, using a specific example, so
Councillor, a comparatively simple thing too.
Yeah, Councillor,
you couldn't reconcile the
Supporting material written by SMT.
well, therein lies, I think, the issue about the interrelationships, and so the point is, if Councillor over the support fellow, actually in this specific case, very good to have you along, thinks it's mumbo jumbo, then obviously we just need to educate him. It's not mumbo jumbo. That might be more engagement.
Well, I caricature it as
no, I don't mind. We're okay. It's good to use this kind of nice refreshing language sometimes. I agree. So mumbo jumbo bonkers, whatever. We
understand. Reconcile to the recommendations of strategy.
Exactly. So in actual fact, that might be a failure on our part. We think we've got a clear line of sight. We've been through it half a dozen times. But actually, if the portfolio holder can't make sense of it, then perhaps we're still not working enough on this subject. So I think for all of us to be successful in our role, then we have to make sure we've delivered on that. Back to you, Catherine.
Yeah, only just to re-ask a question on that then. So what you're saying is the one that the report that left here was actually you felt there wasn't enough backing behind it, but the one actually that went to SMT and they delivered, you felt did.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you. Totally, and then Councillor Perry.
I think just to answer Councillor Randall's earlier question, I mean, you heard from a portfolio holder there clearly. I think from a senior management point of view, each of the portfolio holders has regular meetings with at least one member of SMT, and we'll discuss whatever our current issues within that portfolio. And that is where the discussion will have, which will shape a response to a set of recommendations. So that is the portfolio holder will have some input into the report that's going through to SMT. I think we just need to be careful in also picking up where the feedback to the chairman of SNI might come. And I think we had the discussion the other day. I think that still needs to be tested at SMT as where the most appropriate point for that to come. In my view, it's as the report is set for the SMT agenda, but there needs to be an understanding that SMT might want to think through some of the issues that come there.
But you might actually, that's the point, you might want to discuss it at that point and shape it then.
So, well, I mean, the process is that a report is written to go on the SMT agenda, and same as it goes on to the public meeting or committee agendas, the report needs to be prepared in advance to go on that agenda so it has proper consideration at the meeting. So there is a paper at that point that could be shared
with the chair of scrutiny. Yeah. So Tony, can we clearly define that so we understand and we can agree on that? Or is that something you?
Something I need to say back to SMT. Okay. I mean, I'm giving you my view as the most appropriate point, and that's a suggestion I'll make to SMT. But I can give you my view, not SMT's view at this point in time.
Thank you. So let's take that first. So there's a conceptual benefit I think we all understand in terms of why that's an important step to take. It doesn't do us any harm by having that step in place. It basically continues our engagement process. But if we can have an action there that Tony will come back to us for the next meeting, we've actually that clearly defined that step, and then we conclude it, if that's okay, everybody. We still got one other thing to talk about, everyone, which I think would be an easy one to adopt. But Councillor Perry, you want to make a comment?
Well, I would, because I don't know what went on at the last strategy meeting.
Well, I just got really excited and started without calling anybody names, just got basically very just insulting everybody really.
I mean, the whole job is, and I can speak from a portfolio holder and sort of an SNI member. When I was a portfolio holder, I had the regular meetings, like Tony said, sometimes once a week, normally about once a month, and I was normally briefed on everything. I knew every report which was coming, and there was one time when there was a report had been written and I hadn't seen signs of it, and I asked for my name to be removed from it. and the officer presented it to the strategy group. It was the only time I had a report which I didn't present myself and bore Chris over to death on it, because I knew the subject inside out and I could robustly take any question going on that subject because I was involved, and most portfolio holders would be, well, they'd be fools not to be involved with a degree with any report going up. With the S&I can't say, because I say, you know, we make a report out, and you've got to remember, it doesn't matter how many people are on the panel, we are looking at one specific object. So if we're looking at customer performance, we look at that to the intensity, we don't look at anything else. The SMT have the role of looking corporately across the board, seeing what the effects are, so they're not necessarily going to agree with our recommendations, even though we feel that they're sensible.
And actually there's an important point there, because there's nothing defined that says they have to.
No.
And that's very sensible, because we could be a bunch of lunatics.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, as S&I...
Sorry, I haven't got a better word for it, but it could be, couldn't it? That
part of the role,
I
mean, part of the role is you're looking at performance and highlighting areas of underperformance and how to improve. And really, you're only putting ideas forward. If at the end of the day, strategy group go through the process and think, what a load of buncombe, there's a report written, ditch it all, we're not interested, and then 12 months down the line, something happens which proves that there was foundation in the S&I report, then you've either got your opposition members or the members of that task panel coming forward and saying, but what about this? You see that happen at Parliament quite often, where scrutiny reports aren't necessarily taken forward, and then it comes forward. I don't actually see the purpose of having another meeting to discuss, because obviously you animate the case, SMT have their case to put, a debate takes place. It might be frustrating for you as a chairman not to be able to vote or do anything apart from agree. But at the end of the day, the next thing is council, where there'd be obviously discussion again, and again there's another scrutiny process. But I would have thought that within that time, you know, the liaison would be. I don't think you need a standing sort of watch after every strategy group just to sieve everything.
That's why I think at one point I even referred to it as a point of courtesy, actually, that it comes back saying, you know, is this broadly what you had intended as scrutiny committee? And I think there's no harm in having that step, and that's why I said to Councillor, I don't want to make it a protracted step, I want to get too many people involved in so quick. This is what's going, whichever point that will be.
I'm just getting you to justify it.
And it's, sorry?
I said I'm only getting you to justify why you want to do it.
Well, I think we could probably see the benefit. I mean, if we're to be effective in our role, we want to basically ensure that we have the best success of delivering, at least with the sound group that we have currently. But I think there's no harm in having a robust process, and I think that's the point. Scrutiny is an ongoing process, and a continuous process, continuous improvement, and it's never. Hence, that's the point. It's never really finished. But we do have to have a boundary where we say, okay, we let go. And for me, it's basically I would like to be able to stand up and say, particularly for an invited speaker on behalf of the committee, yes, there has been a proper. I mean, because one of the things we have to speak to Councillor Miller is we have a rigorous process of analysis and methodology. We discuss the issues quite wholeheartedly. They're sensibly discussed, and that's the whole point about the political balance. When they leave here, we are fairly confident they will make a difference. And that's by having that last lock in there saying, just have a conversation. I'm hoping most times it's very sensible. The applicant perfectly see what I've recommended, what you've come back with in terms of your recommendations, and why that will be. Because we don't have, the important thing is as a group, we don't necessarily have all of the facts, even if we've done a lot of research, and we don't necessarily have that big picture which connects those issues up. And it may well be simply a case of a quick conversation or an email saying, this is the full picture, how does that look in that context? Great, please, we will support that as strategy we've dropped on. It's a very soft, almost a soft terminus, if that makes sense. So thank you for that. Let's go, let's wrap this one up, because I'm really conscious of time actually, as always bark more than we can chew in these meetings, I think. So let's have a look. So I think we've got two things there. Do we agree in principle that Tony will come back about having this extra step if doing us any harm? And secondly, that we'll have this, what I call the line of sight document that goes to strategy. It says, here's recommendation, here's our considerations, here's the final recommendation strategy. We had it once we were just adopted. Everybody happy with those two?
Very happy with that.
Great, thank you. And then Tony will come back to us for the next meeting. Thank you, Tony. Very good. So to put those both to bed, I've no intention whatsoever of discussing anything further about specific issues when we're into the last one. So
Oh, sorry, I thought you said you weren't going to discuss anything further. I thought it was time to go out.
Councillor Parry, you've got some catching up to do. Don't be sloping off already. You weren't even here at the last meeting. Right. You should be doing double time. Thank you. So, moving on. Councillor Long, we'd like to hear about your update, please. Obviously, we've got your report, but if you can always, as always, bring it to life for us, please. We know you've been very busy even this week.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. The actual report itself is documented, it's in front of you. I'll just remind you that the timing for this was effectively to review the document by the end of September, review contracts by the end of October, completion of interviews by the end of November, and a report in December. I'm happy that the documents I've so far read are very happy that are fit for purpose. There's no problem with that. What I'm trying to do at the moment is to, with regard to one particular example which is available to us, which was the crematorium project, effectively talk both to officers and to members with respect to the way in which the process works, how it worked during its operational phase, constructional phase, how it's working now during the current phase. We have got interviews arranged with officers here in Daventry tomorrow. Internal audit with Scott at 1:30, Rob Saunders at 2:30, Simon Bowers is coming down at 3:30, and on Friday we're actually talking with the two councillors that sit on the board of, but as far as Daventry is concerned, for the management team, which is Councillor Ratterbury and Councillor Lomax. So those are set up. There are questionnaires which have been produced, which Wendy kindly reviewed for me, and we've modified slightly, but there are actual questionnaires of what we intend to go to both officers and members with. We're still trying to organise interviews with the personnel from rugby. That one's proving a little bit more difficult.
Why is that?
I get the impression that they're actually defensive. They're actually wondering why.
Scared of a bit of scrutiny, are they?
I don't know whether they're scared of it, but they're wondering what the motive is. I mean, you know, from our point of view, one of the comments was, well, actually, we'd like to know what another authority's views on working with Daventry. You know, it's a very straightforward. There's no hidden agenda to this. It was, what was it like? Member to member, officer to officer. Is there something that we could do differently? Is there something to be gained? Equally, talking to the chaplain who runs the crematorium now, the same sort of questions. Could during the constructional phase things have been done better that mean ongoing process? All these sorts of things, which, whilst it's related to a single project at this moment in time, may very well have bearings on other projects in the future, bringing in an officer at an earlier stage to take professional advice. Items like this, these are the sort of things that we're trying to bring out that effectively says, well, here is one really good way, one example of where Daventry District Council has worked with a partner authority. From my introduction, I generally believe that this will be the way forward, that local authorities will work jointly together, funding shared, etc., operations shared. So therefore, it's quite right that we take one particular project and see what can be learned to make assistance both for officers and for members for the future, find out what briefings they were given about joint working. Is there advantages to be gained? Is there things to be learned? So that the one experience that we actually have if there are comments coming out of it, they shouldn't be lost at this particular stage and lost to anybody that want when we go down to do it a second.
It's codifying that kind of learning, really. Councillor, I mean, to me, I was kind of thinking, as you say, it's almost like writing a case study, isn't it?
It is.
To be used by others.
In many ways, Chairman, you've probably hit the nail on the head. It's like doing, without looking for blame, shame, or anything else like that, it's very much a matter of how did we do it? Did it appear to be right in retrospect? And of course, it's always looking backwards that you can see what better ways of doing it. But it would be documenting ideas that have come forward, having looked back, presented them and saying, well, if we do another one, can you take these items on board? Because had it been done better, done differently previously, you might have had a different outcome.
And before we come to Councillor Randall's question, did you was the exercise that you've been going through, looking after this assignment, give you some extra insight into the issues around the earlier presentation around health and wellbeing? Do you think, are there any dangers there for us repeating any potential errors that we've come across?
Well, I certainly at this moment, yes, I think there is. In respect that, if I can let me give you two examples. And this has come from a general conversation that I had with the chaplain who runs the Daventry Rugby Crematorium. This is not the interview, this is just something that happened previously when we went over there. She made a comment that had she been brought in to her post 6 months earlier during the operational phase, there were recommendations that she would have made which would have made the now operational side of the crematorium run much better. One, for example, is that you don't normally have the same entrance and exit because you don't want those people coming in seeing those which are going out.
Yes.
And there was 2 or 3 items with regard to the chapel of rest and all the rest of it that she said, this is what I would have done differently. This is what we've done elsewhere. Had I been brought in 6 months earlier, we could have addressed this. The fact that I wasn't left me in a position whereby I could do nothing about it.
You can't retrospectively fix some of those problems.
Absolutely. And the problem is, it then made the operational side of this ongoing more difficult. Had you put it right to start with, those problems going into the future wouldn't have been there.
That's an excellent insight. And this will be the substantive point there is about the appointment of the...
in this particular, and bearing in mind that running a crematorium is a very specific to people who've done this before. The fact that you can take a builder and you can ask them to build something doesn't mean to say they've been involved in the operational side, the emotional side, etc., the sensitivities to it. And therefore, had you have had that information, even if you'd used them on a consultancy basis on a much earlier basis, the problems that she now has and meets every day, because these weren't addressed earlier, to which she can do nothing about, she now has to deal with all the time. They didn't have to be there had that information come in that much earlier.
Early design.
And if you like, this didn't come out of the interview, this came out from a pre-interview because we went to take a look at it. And this is the sort of thing I'm expecting to come out now after a few months, that actually, had we done this, there might have been other items. I'd like to identify what some of those were. It's using this as a case for putting forward why you should do things, and taking on board your point, Chairman, substantiating why recommendations will be put. Rather than saying, we think it should be. Well, we think it should be because this and this. So therefore, it's evidence-basing it.
Thank you. And Councillor Randall, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, but it was, looking at the, obviously you've done a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And, looking at the interviews, it would be interesting actually that, if it comes back and, and it's worked very well, it would be interesting to know how Northampton Borough felt putting together the contract that obviously with Enterprise that perhaps isn't working maybe so well.
Well, it will be interesting. I think what I've tried to
do, comes to mind as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I could just please go on to what Wendy was saying, Chairman. I chose to do the crematorium one on the basis that it was at the present moment it is not in any way It's not problematic at this moment in time. I'm trying to establish from this point of view on a much smaller basis the sort of answers and examples that I'm putting. But it could very well be, if we come back and there are recommendations to be made, which I'm hoping that we'll find out as we go through, if I come back and say, this is it, you, Chairman, and the rest of the committee might say, well, with that knowledge, could we go back and apply that to that and do a review of that? But this one is a smaller, more simple way of doing it, and it's non-problematic. If
That's
everybody says afterwards, and more contentious, and to some degree, partly done to death, and I don't mean that rudely, but if I can get this one sorted out with recommendations, I can then, if the committee wants, take it further and take it on. But I wouldn't want to take it on. If I come back and say, it's fine, everything's okay, you may say, okay, that's fine. But I don't want to do something and take it on ad infinitum. I gave a time schedule on which I wanted it to try and complete this part of it. If the completion of this section actually leads on to something else, then we'll scope the second part of it and do it differently, Chairman, not as an addition to this, so that we can bring this to an end within the time scale.
So the kind of learning process you go through. I think the point is actually with this, I know we often come back to EMS and Councillor Randall's happy piece of work, but the point is, we've seen tonight, it is a chronic problem.
Oh, it is.
And that's why, again, this is going to stay red for the duration of the programme. That's why it keeps coming up, because the problem's never got fixed. But that's the point. It strikes me, and we have this potential issue tonight. It's about designing in problems at the outset, and that's what we want to avoid.
And equally, Chairman, targets set, are they actually realistic from day one? Which can't be met.
You don't fool anybody. I think that's the point.
I mean, I wouldn't. Sorry, I would compliment Wendy on the work that she did on that particular. I think it was a very, very good piece of work. To deal with a problem which effectively was fundamentally flawed from the very beginning.
And I think in terms of
objectives,
district, that's the point. In terms of impact. Councillor Randall, do you want to have a quick comment?
No. The other one that I was just going to say, you've obviously read through all this, all this documentation, which there is a lot of, but then you've just picked up on something that actually you would have thought being brought in right at the very beginning is the person that's actually dealing the most with this. So all of this, obviously, that is in here, although it looked good, it actually obviously didn't state something, the obvious. And perhaps sometimes the obvious isn't in the documentation.
Actually, Councillor, what's the root cause of that issue with the individuals and their time of appointment?
That, Chairman, is a question that will be answered through the interviews, both with the officers from Daventry and Rugby and also with the chaplain themselves. I suspect that it's one of these items that you don't build a crematorium every day, and you don't appoint officers to every day. And I think I go back to the point of whether it's officers within Daventry, members within Daventry, or building and construction people. They are all to do with a constructional phase of something which is a final project. They are I doubt that any of them, other than the mechanisms of building and actually the physical operation of running a crematorium in terms of mechanical operations of a cremator, etc., they can do that. But when it comes to the rest of it, in terms of taking on board funerals, taking on board people's feelings, the way in which it's done, I suspect the vast majority of people have never done it once in a lifetime, and therefore they're actually working with the unknown. If you and I suspect that will probably, once we've had all the interviews, will probably be one of the recommendations, that you should actually, if you're going to take this beyond just a constructional phase, even at the very beginning, bring the person in who is going to operate, get their views, so that ultimately, when you can design this, actually all those bits are taken on board, so it actually makes the long-term running of this much better. But you can only do that in its construction or design phase. You can't actually do it later, because you don't have the room, you don't have the time, you don't effectively have lots of things to enable you to achieve it.
You've locked in the design.
You've locked in, and you've actually locked in the way in which it's going to operate right at the beginning. And if it's flawed at the beginning, you've locked that in. It's very rarely you could go back and
But,
change it.
and that's the point. I think the lesson is, particularly with this project we're looking at earlier, it's about having that scrutiny now and having those discussions now, that debate now, so we don't lock in problems later. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions here? Again, conscious of time, and I've got a good piece of work here in operation. It's not obviously included yet, but has that satisfied members in terms of an interim report? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there's only one thing, just picking up on that, like, obviously, you know, we've gone in depth on this company earlier on this evening, and there was a few bits not in there. Isolation. We've got a voluntary organisation that deals with isolation, so you know, and it's making sure we're tapping in and making sure people, and it's whether if you work off these documents, whether those things are within that document. So that's the end.
It's a bit that would worry me, Wendy, to be honest, and I'm glad Chris is here actually, is that, you know, the point that, Chris, you made earlier on, you have a board of directors. I mean, what I don't see at this moment in time quite clearly is where the board of directors come into this, in terms of you're working with potential partner organisations, but some of these particular areas that you're going to be dealing with, be it the mental health side or items like that, how many of the board of directors actually have internal or good working knowledge of the way some of these things work? So
it's about a competence issue.
Yeah, if for example one of these people came along and said, we want to do X, whatever that might be, we want to take it on and run that, we'll bid for it on that. If it's the board of directors that at the end of the day are actually deciding whether they can or can't, with what level of experience do those 5 people have to actually say, actually, yeah, they can do that?
Your question, I think the answer to your question is really quite simple, which I think we did go over before, is that you, therefore, the officers who are involved in this with us on that, we have the benefit of their professional advice. So presumably the judgment that has to be made by the board of directors is that given good advice, and you could say, how do we know it's good advice? So you can go on that one forever, can't you? But believe that we have people who are competent on this, and then, so, the people who built Concorde, the board of directors, perhaps none of them ever could have flown an aeroplane in actual fact, but they knew from the reports that came from their engineers that this, that and the other, that if they did this, that and the other, they would end up with a product at the end. And I suppose it's the quality of the advice we get as directors. Now, if we go down the other road saying, is it going to be Chris Over who will give advice on mental health, on this, that, or the other, then I'm not qualified to do that. And I would doubt that there in actual fact many others are. They may be well-meaning amateurs, but intention amateurs, and even have some experience in those fields. But I mean, you're talking about something that's... going back to a subject we've...
Yeah, I don't want to spend any time further dwelling on that, but the clear point is there is learning between the two. Maybe, Councillor Long, it might be a good opportunity as part of the next phase just to kind of broader thinking, maybe to have a conversation with Councillor Over about that particular committee and see how it kind of informs and shapes.
I'd be happy to do that. But as I say, just one final part on that,
please.
if I may, and I'll conclude it. Because the bit that concerns me is that this is new. This is new for Daventry District Council. At the moment, most of the work that's been done has been done at county council level with the equivalent of the cabinet member over there and the officers. No detriment to anybody within DDC, within the officers here. We're beginning to deal with items which we've never really dealt with before to this sort of depth. So, in respect of providing good sound advice to the members of the board, actually officers are learning as much as anything else. So I just wonder how much the officers will have learned and where that learning will have come from to provide that information to the directors.
Without going on the same subject and murdering it, I expect that if we have officers and they're considered to be competent, I expect them to be competent enough to provide the board with the information they want. I don't have to, in an individual sense, corporate sense, have to start to cross-examine them upon their competence, but they have to make reference. It's like going to Encyclopedia Britannica or the internet or whatever you use, or the people who have been involved in it before, to make certain the information is appropriate.
But actually, in the early stages.
I mean, there's a new phase for us, but I do agree. But what I'm trying to say is that...
But in the early stages, shouldn't you be actually asking those questions to make sure the information...
I think that's the point. I think
the questions have already been asked here this evening, and I think they'll be asked by the board. So.
We could go on forever. I'm very concerned about the time now, in actual fact. And It never strikes me that it looks like there's a lot on these agendas until you actually start the meeting. But I think there's the real point here actually about managing the complexity, assessing competence, etc. What I'd like to do actually, Councillor, is bring yours to a close now. I'm just asking one final question. Are you happy that you'll be able to deliver on time? I'm sure you will.
I'm happy that we can get... the only delay that I envisage, Chairman, is rugby, which is to some degree out of air control. I have a phone call booked to the operations manager at rugby 12 o'clock tomorrow, which I will try to carry out, and if so, try to explain it to him what I'm trying to... I'm not trying to point fingers. This is what we're trying to do, and trying to arrange
case
something.
study type approach,
Yeah.
etc.
If the worst comes to the worst, I will do an interim report based upon the information gained from the officers and members here in Daventry. I can supplement it later on should it take longer, but I'm pretty sure that by the end of December I can produce either a full or an interim report which will have some degree of recommendations that we can work with.
Excellent, thank you. I'm sure it's in safe hands, thank you. And I'm sorry about truncating that conversation. I think I might have to go to the committee. I think it's the witching hour, which means I have to ask for more time. Is that correct?
9:15.
Is it 9:15? Great. We've got a bit longer. So thank you for that. That's excellent. I think it dovetailed beautifully into the project earlier, particularly about learning in these multi-partner relationships.
Yeah.
Let's move on. This one might be a straightforward one, I think. You've got two words, Councillor Ferry, a review of DDC's Rural Economic Law Strategy, verbal update.
Not started.
2 words, thank you. No, I need to push you a little bit more. Not started is a good answer because of the time we have, but can you give us your projections of when your scoping document will arrive? Can we expect it by the February meeting, please?
Yeah, hopefully. Not start. I haven't got round to the scoping report. While I've been convalescing, I've been doing a bit of research on little bits on pieces I was sort of interested in covering in it.
Fine. Will you have the document for February, Councillor Perry?
I'm hoping, as long as I can get a meeting with you, just to cross-reference with the.
We can easily have a meeting, and let's do that. So let's say scoping document February. You've got plenty of time to do that.
But I do like being read on the chart.
So, yeah, I don't like anybody being read because obviously we get evaluated on our performance and have to give a report back to full council. And I don't look like a bunch of layabouts already. People question our remit, etc. in terms of our.
Don't worry, I've got a direction of travel arrow which is pointing upwards.
So we know you don't like red arrows. So let's have the scoping document by February committed to. You and I can meet up, Councillor Perry. We're more than happy to, like I said in previous correspondence, happy to come and see you.
Chairman, can I just ask a question on this one with my colleague over there? I get on very well with by and large, not over the years, I've known him a long time. I mean, quite clearly, he'll need to speak to Simon Bowes on this, and it may just be of interest to people because, I have some responsibilities for economic regeneration, and, it's often said at meetings, but they forget about the villages they've never given attention.
Councillor, can I suggest that you two have a conversation
I just
to
say
help?
this now, so people here also understand, not it's a private conversation in which you don't know what was said. In actual fact, that we do take account of the need for economic regeneration within the villages and the key satellite villages, and there are opportunities in the villages for business, and where business is suitable for villages and competent and fits within the matrix comfortably and all the rest of it, then those things are discussed in the broader picture of business opportunity and regeneration and what have you. And just to amuse you all, this is just to let you know that it's not as easy as it seems. I can remember a farmer coming to me saying, I grow 1,000 acres of potatoes, he said, and what I'd like to do, he said, instead of put them in a lorry and send them down to Norfolk to be rebagged, he said, and washed and rebagged, I'd like to set up, he said, a plant in my yard here, he said, where I can probably employ 3 people a year, full-time equivalents or something, washing, bagging the potatoes that I grow. He says it'll save all the lorry journeys and everything else. But when I put it to my parish council, they're all opposed to it because they said the noise from the thing will spoil the quality of their life. So you do get, from one extreme to the other on these things. There are also people, no doubt, in a bedroom in an office there who are doing £1 million worth of business, probably selling oil or exchanging gold or doing all sorts of other things which are of equal value to the economy, which often we don't perhaps know about. So I should be very interested to know what the scope of this report is.
Well, Councillor Overall, I think Councillor Perry will have to discuss the scope with you if he's doing his role
These things
correctly.
we discussed.
So let's
we discussed this in terms of...
Fine. What I'd like to do now is stop this discussion.
I think that's a portfolio holder on the hook.
Well, that's fine.
Because I've kept my powder dry
I think
and I've not exposed him to anything.
May I go home now, please?
It might be better if you did actually now, Councillor Over, now you've had to say. So look, Councillor Over can go. We'll rattle on with the meeting so then we'll shake it up stories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending, Councillor Over. It's always been appreciated.
Thanks for putting up with me.
I think we have to have a little bit more scrutiny of the economic development.
I do
Portfolio.
I'll join you with that, Kevin.
It's the only time I ever get some level of authority over Councillor Over. My senior would. So let's simply make sure we've understood the agreement. Councillor Perry, you'll have a scoping document to us by February to save us any embarrassment. Obviously, it might go over into next year, but let's get that document.
Yes.
Have any conversation with Councillor Over.
Subject to a meeting with you, Chairman.
You'll have a meeting.
Don't forget to put that in.
Absolutely, well, it goes without saying. By the way, I'm very used to having a meeting with them.
That's good.
Goodbye's the day as well.
Right, moving on. Councillor Randall, we have your scoping document up for review now.
You do. But I'm gonna
It's interesting actually because we had what I'd probably call a late submission, some track changes on the document from Simon. I don't think anybody will have access to that document, but have you seen it? I don't know if you've
Well, no, because it only come through today.
Quite late.
Tony's actually just given it to
Good.
me. So I've just been, while the discussions have been going on, I've just been reading.
Reviewing it. I think.
Yeah. And there are some points there that actually I agree with.
I think we could do this by exception. Basically, if we can say which ones you're happy to agree with, and then we just roll it over and say that, because the document on the whole doesn't change the substantive nature of the
No,
document.
it doesn't. It
detail.
doesn't really. It doesn't. And basically, Kevin, because you wasn't here when we spoke about this, actually it was just reviewing that we found every time we had the corporate strategic plan, actually that we questioned many parts of it because we didn't actually fully understand. So it was just looking at whether it was fit for purpose. They're obviously public documents, whether the public would actually be able to understand, and whether if portfolio holders were questioned, whether they would actually be able to, talk us through it. So that was actually where this scoping document has come from.
Now, we've also got, other conversations we've had. I think we need to stay firm on this one, actually, Councillor. Look, there's something to be looked at. It may well be, again, it comes back and says, look, the portfolio holders are happy with it as it is, and they take on board the comments. We've had discussions about that. But actually, one of the bones of contention I've had of it is all the way through, it's about cumulative performance. And again, tonight we could have revisited that, say that cell for environmental performance, obviously not in this particular round, but has been red for the whole period of time. That, when you start to look at it in that bigger picture aspect, will start to have an impact upon how we view performance. And that's one of the things, without prejudging what we might find, that was one of the things that I very much encourage us to look at the data. And I think to use this term might be the way the data sets are presented, but let's just go and have a look at it and see what we've come back with. Now, apart from those, just look at the documents you've got, because there's nothing real material changes in it. Any questions for Councillor Adler on that? Anything you'd like to, or can we just push ahead of it?
I have got another task member, because Councillor Long said he would come on.
Yeah. Excellent.
And also, so did Councillor Frenchman, but he did say that I'd forced him into it, but I don't remember saying anything.
Can't beat it. Well, in that case...
so there'll be four. There's four.
Yeah, well, in that case then, Councillor Adler, so you've got Councillor Long, and Councillor Frenchman, and I said I would be happy to do some interviewing.
Yes, you did. Yes.
So in that case then, I don't know how you want to deal with the amendments, recommendations from
Right.
Simon.
Okay. Well, the first one obviously is the very easy one. They're not KPIs, they're PIs. So that's very simple. So we'll just adjust that. The same as when we use it in different terms, because that one later on.
Actually, how are we going to just before you carry on, how are we going to manage this? Wendy, you have a copy of this document. Would you be able to accept the changes as we go through them? Just make a note of what one change. Okay, so they're not they are numbered actually, so that's good. So SB, sorry for those who haven't got the document. It's very simple. So SB1 is his first comment. Basically, it's a simple case of accept or no, don't accept.
Yeah, on the SB1 comment, it just say that portfolio holders also have other information to assist them, and might be useful if this wording was clarified. Well, further down, actually, that was one of the things that we were going to investigate, is whether there was, further information to assist them. So that was something that I felt we'd already identified.
What do you want to do? I mean, that's only a record. He's not asking us to remove it.
No.
We could just say, okay, thanks very much. We'll just basically, when when you do these track changes, you just basically accept.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, that's right.
We'll just,
we.
We've made note of the comment. That's fine. We don't need
Yeah.
to do anything. It doesn't change the nature of the document. So just delete his comments. I think is the comment. We're not going to change anything on that one. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So SB2. So yeah, we've agreed to change that.
So accept.
SB3, where we've done the task aim and the task objective, that actually, yes, the task aim of 1 is very similar to our aim that we've put in there when we put to evaluate. So it does duplicate itself in a way.
Well, that shouldn't be a problem. And the aim is why we're doing it, where we want to go, and the objective is why we're doing it. That's the difference. So the aim is where we want to get to.
We're still going to get the same outcome, aren't we?
Exactly. I think it's. I mean, when I made my comments, I just put a cross next to it. I thought it was kind of.
Almost pedantic, some of the
pedantic. Yeah, I agree. I think we just delete the comment.
And on comment S4, the corporate plan is only part of the information the portfolios have. Yes, well, we understand that. That's what we're going to have.
That's what we're doing.
What else
So
we're going to be looking at?
But with that one, taking that one on board,
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, Wendy, it's very much like doing a set of accounts. If you put a set of accounts, there are times when a qualifying statement needs to be put in, so that anybody externally reading that as a public document can understand it. I would say the same with here. Perhaps there is an element sometimes where there is a qualifying statement required to something like this, so that a third party who is not generally up to date with it could read it and understand it.
Well, the only thing that I would say is I wish that it actually put in there what other information was available, because then we'd know exactly what we're looking at.
Well, that's the point. I mean, you could always say the context is incorrect, but basically you just want to know, do we get a...
So we now know there is other information, so we just want to know what it is. And
Probably varies,
so I think
probably varies per item, Chairman.
Yes, exactly what the item
problem.
is.
Yeah.
I think the comment I think the comment should be deleted in our original stats. The problem is there's a lot of pedantics in this. I understand being forensic, but we don't need them.
Right. Okay.
It'll wash out anyway in the process.
Yeah.
So let's delete
when
that
we come to do our final recommendation.
SB4. So all we've got is we've just accepted an SB2, and otherwise we'll make the minor change to the scope of the document. We're going to, I think probably the mood is, otherwise we'll be discussing, we're going to accept it anyway, but just a couple of comments in terms of what it looks like as a document, if anything that refers to it. So let's go to SB5.
SB5, the comment on there, this does not appear to relate to any of the aims, and that relates to investigate whether any other documents, information are required by the S&R committee to assist them in their role of scrutinising performance.
That's the point, isn't it? You'll find out. It's an objective is why you're doing it, because you want to investigate what's happening. So I think leave it in.
I think we need to leave it in because
leave the comment.
it would be detrimental without it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, fine. Over the page now we've got comment 6. Now we put to ensure all data documents and performance reporting give a clear and credible view that enables portfolio holders to deliver on the KSP PIs. Strictly whilst quarterly provides performance information, no performance report, however good, could meet this test.
I know what he's saying. He's basically saying just because you've got the information doesn't mean you could deliver. But my argument here will be if you've got the information, it enables you to at least have the desire to deliver. And it makes for debate basically and question. I think the comment needs to be deleted.
To some degree, if to be perfectly honest, if you adopt it, you actually negate S&I's work, to be truthful.
Absolutely.
So I think it needs to be left out.
I think the bigger point here really is, it's about what you monitor, you manage, basically.
So the next one is to ensure all data in the quarterly plan is aligned, and then it's with what?
I think it's probably a good point. I'd probably say probably the additional words there might be to ensure is aligned with the corporate plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we just insert the words accept his comment and just not accept his comment, but acknowledge his comment, just say ensure it's aligned with the corporate plan.
Okay.
That
And
deals
aligned
with
with
that
the
one.
corporate plan, is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next one down is point 3, to ensure that the portfolio holders have the information available in the quarterly plan to understand, master and control their brief. And the comment is, here it is particularly important to stress that the quarterly plan is not the only and necessarily the main source of information, which again we'll be looking into that with that.
This comes back to the validation of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Delete the comment.
Yeah.
We thanks very much, but we do. We're not. Yeah.
And then the other bits that have gone now is the fact that we've put in Julie Lewis, and that's taken out as the
Perhaps I think we can accept that.
manager. Yeah, happy to accept that. And then the other bit, slight changes, the committee rather than there. So that's fine. The committee frequently feels confusion in the way the data is presented.
One moment. Which
I'm
one's
sorry.
that one? Sorry.
This
Oh
is-
yes, sorry. That's we can take those together as SP9 except the comments.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's kind of neutralising.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fine.
And then we've put.
Yes. We've got one more minute. Keep going. Sorry.
Okay. And then just a bit further down, environmental performance data, e.g. This is puzzling. The corporate strategic plan data for environmental services is generally responsibly up to date. I know where that came about. That came about in the last meeting where Julie was saying it was running a long way behind.
Absolutely.
She had the data sometimes, but it had to go to a portfolio health for. That's where that come from, and that's
Absolutely.
where we felt that often it is.
It is. She said
Sometimes
it
it could be 6 months
is.
behind.
Absolutely. Delete the comment.
So, right,
It's quite legitimate.
It's quite legitimate.
yeah, okay.
10.
And on 11, I think we can accept that. That is, we will reserve our option to triangulate interview findings by interviewing, and then it's but all that bit's taken out. So, contracts and performance and business manager, and it's appropriate.
I don't know what it's got with the comments about triangulate, but I think for the sense of time, we understand what it means. We can just accept the comments.
Right. Okay.
What I'd like to do now is quickly say our members and officers are actually happy to continue.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Sorry what's going on. Actually, that was a good meeting we had there about this. We're not far off. So, okay, we've got that. So, Wendy's got those. So what she'll do is make the changes to that document. Obviously, that's just for their perpetuity. But actually, remove any of those comments where we said delete them and just accept those track changes as appropriate. Are we happy to accept that and get on with it?
Yeah.
I'm away the last week in November. Other than that, I'm
Okay.
around.
Well, what I'll do is I'll whiz out an email, see when we're available, put some weeks together, and then come to a mutual date.
Yes, I think what it's really about just identifying people to interview. Remember we had that conversation about just getting people in, spending a day or two, just blitzing all the portfolio orders, having a consistent interview template and go for it. Yeah. Good. We can work up the detail afterwards a bit more. That's fine. Thank you very much. So we've agreed for that one. Thank you very much for your work there, Councillor. Well, one point actually, I'm not sure entirely telling you what happened with Simon, but it's not my desire to be reviewing the track changes of this committee. But we'd like to have those sooner, but it was obviously helpful to have them.
Yeah, point noted. Point noted.
Point noted, that's all it is. I understand. Right, good. So moving on, Councillor Patchett is up now.
Yeah, the document is as it is written, and just a couple of questions there really. In that I wasn't quite sure that it was Deputy Leader Liz Griffin that was the corresponding portfolio holder. I don't know whether anybody else can shed any light on that.
Well, it's an interesting point itself, actually. So, Tony, who is the? Do you know the portfolio orders for these?
I think it probably sits with the Access and Communication portfolio holder, Wayne Howard.
So, Wayne Howard.
Right. Okay. Right.
Does anyone have any questions about this? I mean, normally we give Councillor Patchett a really tough time. I'm not saying it's late, we shouldn't, but Tony.
Just a couple of observations. Councillor Patchett and I met and went through some of this.
I had some help.
Very good.
Just a bit of feedback from colleagues on S&T really. Point 6 in the bottom box on page 1. It was a question we had about whether members could be involved in complaints handling at stage 3.
Yeah.
And I think when Councillor Patchett and I discussed this, then I was reasonably comfortable if that's left in as a question, as opposed to any more firm statements. Thinking behind that is, constitutionally, that's what it is. So the investigation of complaints is a delegation to the Chief Executive and therefore through to officers. But reasonable question to ask as part of
the analysis.
Yeah. The other one, just a point really, is at the end of the document there's a note that sort of sits outside of the table, which is I think it was just a note that was sort of left on. Review of current stage 3 complaints on file with the Deputy Chief Executive. If that's part of it, I'm not suggesting either way. It needs to be
in the
body of the document. Councillor Patchett, where does that belong? Or is it just a note to self?
It's partly a note to self, but I mean I'll take on board what Tony's saying. I'll deal with that one first then. Where does it go?
If I can suggest it probably goes in witnesses to be invited and rationale for invite. So the witness is the Deputy Chief Exec and the rationale is to review stage 3. And I think that will probably help in terms of the question around member involvement as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Randall.
Well, it would be probably interesting to know because for councillors, if we do have any stage 3, you know, and how many? If it's just one and we've only had one in 10 years, we could think, oh well. I mean, we don't know. So.
Well, we do because it's actually reported to corporate governance, which is where the idea came from originally. In that there was, I think, was it 15, Tony, or 16 stage 3 complaints from last year?
Something in that order. Yeah.
I don't have that particular bit of paper just to hand at the moment. And I mean, there are some going to Ombudsman, and some are obviously don't fly, and there are one or two that do, and it was just very sort of, you know, if members had involvement in some way, but sort of going back to the point 6 as well. It was just something that, although I mean the way that the complaints between against other members or officers are dealt with is by a separate committee, and whether there was any legs in the final or one or two of these stage 3 complaints being looked at where there could be a resolution by members rather than by the Chief Exec, then it was just an idea, which is something I was going to chew over in my mind really.
Sure, in mind. Okay.
Nothing more than that. And with regards to well, we're on task members as well. I was just intending to cast the net and see who might want to come and play along.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons we had from our last strategy meeting was let's have a broad church wherever we can. It still comes back through it, but obviously about engagement from members, etc. So, you know, look to have a hearty panel on there. We like to have these up front, but you know, it's been quite a challenge. So, go away and choose some members. Obviously, people here might want to participate, or of course, just cast the net a bit as long as it's not directly implicated in any way.
And it might be perhaps good to have a mix of, well, if that's all right, to have like some that are on planning, some that aren't on planning, because you know, and have quite a mix, really. Yeah.
So basically, we as you're the leader of the project, get your team together, and then what we really want to do is make sure it's delivered back next time, and we've got a good line of sight to your scoping document.
Well, we'll certainly have a report back to back to the committee in February, but whether it's complete or not will depend on time available.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
But let's have a good cross-section, of course, and because a scrutiny is, of course, an apolitical process, please make sure you also don't just maybe consider Conservative colleagues, but people from other parties as well.
oh yeah, well,
We do have a bit of a mix of those.
You're willing to.
Well, and I think, yeah, and honest and I, obviously, that's what it's all about, getting that mix and balance. So.
Absolutely different
Same
perspectives.
with you guys, if you want
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Are you looking in any shape or form to compare our corporate complaints procedure with anybody else?
yes, I had thought about that. Yes.
It always helps to do some kind of level of benchmarking. Again, you've had this question again tonight, particularly for the panel earlier, from learning from others, etc.
It's good from an evidential point of view to have a look at how other authorities do
Just
theirs.
compare and contrast.
Just to contrast it. I mean, it's gone well with other projects doing that. So and invariably officers, when they produce reports for members of council, that there are a certain amount to do this, for example, this way, or whatever. And so yes, yes, it's the answer.
Because I might be able to assist you. I might not be able to come to every meeting, but I might be able to assist you on some.
Great. I think let's agree to you take Councillor Patchett, you agree that offline and go and just deliver it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But get a good cross section, lots of robust debate amongst yourselves, analysis before you come back here. Let's capture these. So, Wendy, did you get the final comments that we needed to? So we've got the access and communications portfolio order, Councillor Howard, and then we've got the location of the spare comment into a proper box. Did you have those? Are you able to finish those off?
Chairman, could we agree to move on and perhaps have a glass of water? Would you mind?
I'll wait for 1 minute if you need to go and get a quick glass of water, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bob, could you get me on?
Yes, no problem.
Before you go, actually, are we happy to adopt this and get it moving?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Just a white one. Not too cold. Just wet time.
Bag. Can you get me one, Bob? My poor dog at home, he'll be alone.
Oh, don't worry. I'm on a night shift.
Yeah, well, my dog sat in front of the front door. As soon as I put my coat on, he sat there for an hour and wouldn't move because he thought I was going to take him with me. I sneaked out the back door.
So we're nearly there. We're nearly there. Not long.
What time is it, station?
10:30.
Oh,
So I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just what you need. Don't worry. I don't want to mess about. I do want to do this, but we do need to do this
I've
justice.
got this break up now, so I've got you here now.
Right. So you'll be glad there, Councillor Patchett, we've agreed to adopt your scoping document. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe you should always put them at this point in the agenda.
Yeah, I'll have all my stuff at the end of the agenda.
Good. Right,
It's
so
all down to Tony.
it does help actually. I think it's a much sharper document for sure. We see what happens. If we've got any chance of it being a success in terms of our findings and recommendations, we get strategy of full council. We have to begin the process of scoping stage to make sure we do a good job. Very good. Thank you for coming back, everybody. Let's move on to the Scrutiny Improvement Committee Rolling Work Programme. Here it is. You can see we've made some changes. We've knocked the top ones off because they're done and dusted and they're in last year. And it's still quite small, but there we go. It still fits on one document. I don't think there's anything to add on the fact we'll update that again for the next one. Just gives you an understanding of where we are.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What's the black blob for?
Good question. What's the black?
Well, I got used to this green, orange and red, and then all of a sudden we got black there.
Yeah, it's a fair question. The black
I think I might be able to help you, Chairman. If,
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I think they're ones that haven't gone as far as any recommendations, therefore they couldn't possibly have had any recommendations.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think that might have been the logic there of colouring it.
It's a black art, isn't it?
Yes, the dark art.
Well, I thought it was just you come to the edge of the world and fell off the edge.
We've come a bit, well, Councillor Perry, bear in mind we're waiting for you to come back. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, on number 9, I think that is,
Yeah.
on improving communications in 106 agreements.
Yes.
Do you remember? I can't even remember that one.
Well, that's because it was one of Councillor Patchett's, and that was the point of the beginning of the meeting, where I think we'd...
It just didn't continue.
It just didn't continue, in actual fact.
Well, I mean, if I might sort of interject in
Yeah.
I kind of got fed up with the conversation by the time we got to that, and I think that, you know, cancelling it is probably was probably it.
Excellent. So let's say we've
Regret that. So I might
we've shelved that one then. That's why. That's the point of the vote.
suspended and return to it again in next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just put we'll put it on the bottom, suspended.
I actually would have liked to have seen that one because I still don't actually know what point I communicate with on 106.
Well,
So that, to me, that was, you know, that's...
Well,
I don't
Can
know.
I make a suggestion actually? Sorry, Councillor Patchett. If you two want to get together and discuss how you could bring it back around for consideration, but in a very focused way, then
there's a lot. There's a lot going on
Exactly.
at the moment, and there'll be a lot more information sort of early January. So yes, we'll get together and do that. Then. That's all right with you, Randy?
Great, thank you. Welcome those coming back round. So that's good. And of course, we've always got this opportunity, or even before you want to put something on, and we can take it on board. But let's get into a position where they're nice and polished. Any other questions on that one? Or then what black box of all, what's number 9? Okay, thank you. So I'll put on number 9, suspended, but just a little note, South, Randall talks Patchett. But we'll leave that up until you come back round.
Thank you.
Then we have, with respect to the rolling work programme, we also have, I've got a couple of issues which I wanted to talk to you about, which is raised very quickly. I don't know if it's how much we can discuss on this one, but you may have noted that there's been some correspondence in the Daventry Express, particularly concern of residents on Monksmoor about communications, particularly about having literally no phone lines in the infrastructure and this kind of thing, particularly problematic for home workers. And I wondered if we've got, even though it's obviously a commercial development on there, if there's anything we had to say on behalf of the residents on that particular issue, and if it's something that would require any level of scrutiny, even though it's outside our direct control.
Well, it wouldn't be because we contributed so much to a lot of money to BT, and we could scrutinise how that money's been spent. Because it was a bit of an open-ended thing, that wasn't it? That we worked to contribute. Was it 220,000 or something? I forget the final figure.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing, is it?
I think you're getting very close to where you start interfering in things that actually don't concern us. It's a commercial. Monksmoor is a commercial development, and this is to do with the
it's between the residents.
This is between the residents and the developer.
Well, not when public money's been shoved into it.
But that's the point. I don't think there is public money, is there? I don't know. Tony.
No, the 200,000 that I think Councillor Patchett's referring to was for superfast broadband, which was the county scheme. So it's not about basic telephone provision.
No.
Oh, right.
I think in this instance, Chairman, you actually...
You think we should steer clear of
I
this?
think you should steer well clear of it. This is a matter between the new residents and the developer, and potentially any legal actions that they may wish to take.
Yeah.
The council wishes to be miles away apart from that one.
Probably best left alone in terms of scrutiny.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So I wanted to raise that one for you. So again, it's these things that you note, and is a role to play. So the second one actually that I've been considering was about the electoral registration. And I think this may have come up also in relation to the communications one last time. And I wonder if there's any kind of pre-scrutiny work that we might need to do in this area as well, particularly in terms of have we been able to, are we getting the message across, etc. Is there any kind of way we can analyse it, etc.
Once again, I would come back to Chairman. Is that a role? As this comes underneath the
Chief Exec.
As it comes under the Chief Exec, but in his role as the officer responsible. Under that, he's not responsible to this authority. He's responsible to outside of that. I mean, when we looked at making recommendations with regard to the way in which polling booths took place, etc., the comment was, "I'll note it, but actually, I don't. You know, as far as we're concerned, my responsibility lies outside of here. I'll note it, but I don't have to take it on board."
Yeah.
I would bring the same point to light.
Okay, thank you. Tony, do you have any...
Well, I was really going to make the comment that under the quality of public engagement, there was a recommendation about electoral registration. I can't remember the detail of that, but there was one that was, as I recall, was adopted by council.
I think that's... Yeah, I definitely remember there was some references, and maybe there's not an issue there yet, but maybe, I don't know, maybe even the scope, etc. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that actually, we did make reference to that. And, I mean, to me, there is, you know, that we do have part of the duty really to get people on the electoral roll, even for knowing who's living in a property, you know, and things. So, you know, it's beneficial.
Doesn't that come under this new independent
Well,
individual?
Exactly, that was hence the point about the new...
but it's things like even when people are in and out of properties, you know, multiple occupancy, and you know, actually if somebody phones up to say there's 10 people living next door and there's only 2 on the electoral register, or I don't know really. But
Tony.
I mean, we are going through the process of transition to individual electoral registration. Our match rates compare quite favourably with other authorities at the moment. So, having said that, we're actually doing a canvass now to mop up the ones where there aren't complete matches. I can't remember the figures. I think we had about an 87–88% match rate on the data matching exercise, full matches. So we're looking at the 12 or 13%. We've just been going around through doing a canvass at the moment. So the results of that are coming back through for a run of the electoral register for beginning of December.
Tony, before I come on to Councillor, who's responsible for running that programme? Is that in your area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't really call you in, can we, as such? I'm not
Of course
sure.
we can.
yeah.
Might be an interesting idea, actually. Councillor Randall.
No, actually, I was just going to say that I know. Well, I assume it's somebody from the council that is actually going out doing a bit of door knocking and getting people enrolled where they're not enrolled. Because I met someone the other day and he said he'd only moved in for a few weeks, and actually he'd had a knock on the door to say you're not on the electoral register, and they picked him up. So, you know, he'd only moved in and signed it there and then.
Okay, so would this be a benefit for us as a committee to have Tony do a presentation? Who's the corresponding portfolio? Or is that Wayne?
I mean, it was linked to Councillor Howard as part of the public consultation or public engagement scrutiny task panel. But I think Councillor Long has a point. Your electoral registration is subject to its own particular rules. The chief executive is responsible for electoral registration. That's a delegation within the constitution. So he doesn't report back in the same way.
And does that also extend to the individual electoral registration?
Well, yeah, individual electoral registration is the new system, where previously the household are responsible for registering all in the household. Each individual is now responsible for their own registration. So it's a change which the government is pushing through with a desire to have maximum numbers on the electoral roll before the general election. So this is the first year that it will be run, so we're running through a transition programme, and no doubt there'll be some national reflection on this post-general election.
And the idea, obviously, about encouraging voting, ensuring a high level of participation, etc., because you've got these kind of family households, and you've maybe got the man of the house saying, I'm responsible, I'll put you on, etc. But in terms of a piece of just having a broader presentation so we can understand the issue from a deeper electoral issue and democratic issue, is there some merit in just a short presentation from the next side? I'd certainly welcome that. Would other members welcome a short presentation?
Well, I think it'd be very interesting, actually.
Yeah. And again, with the spirit, we can.
Was there a poll?
We can always put up forward the participation.
No.
Sorry.
Was there a poll in the put in Middle Margin as well? So that was the issue.
No.
No, the recommendations is that there's a new one put on Timken in Mayfield Park, and that they actually go to the Daventry Hotel, Middlemore.
So for you, Chairman,
Yes.
if I can just
Please,
respond to that. The polling places and polling stations review has not yet completed. That will report to Council. It's report to December Council.
Yeah, those were just sorry, Tony. They were just recommendations.
Yeah, I mean the recommendations went out to consultation, and those will be considered and reported through. So there's no decisions been made on that yet.
So in that case, then, thank you for that. Can I take the E and link it to number 9 and say, would we accept having Tony along to give us an update on the performance, basically the steps in place for individual electoral registration? I think it would be very timely, particularly as we lead up to the election, have you as our calling officer and any corresponding, but just defining the corresponding portfolio order if that is Wayne. But maybe it's not, maybe if you're happy to. I don't want to make it too...
I would have thought, to be honest with you, it would be better in this instance. I don't think there is a corresponding portfolio.
No.
And Tony would do a superb job.
Tony, are you happy to do that, Tony, for the next one?
Yep.
Thank you. It's a bit like involving your own family along, I noticed it.
I'll sit on the other side of the table.
Okay, thank you. So we agreed that one, and that actually leads us back to number 8A, which is the implementation log for the plain English. Over to Tony, thank you.
Yes, Chairman, this is just really telling us, or telling how the actions have been taken forward from that particular task panel. The first side with recommendations 1, 2 and 3 on it is all white in the RAG status, because those have not yet been, we've not reached the date for those, but those are still planned. Over the page, recommendation 4 is 2/3 complete, so we're showing that as amber. There's some updates to the website to be done this month, and there's a recommendation 5. There's a letter still to be drafted to go off to government, so that's not yet been done, but it's in hand to be done, and we'll report back on that in due course.
So let me get this clear then. So, Tony, for the sake of absolute clarity, because it's time of night, so on item number 5, assignment number review, recommendations implemented. How many was that, sorry? We've got 5 on there, so have we done any of those recommendations?
We've not completed any of them. I think on the first page, recommendations 1, 2 and 3 have not yet been delivered.
Yep.
On the second side, recommendation 4 has been sort of split into 3 actions. Two of those have been done, the third one hasn't yet.
You see how hard it is? We think it's one recommendation against,
well, I mean, in terms of steps for us to deliver that.
The operationalisation of these recommendations is quite
and recommendation 5 has not yet been delivered, so there's nothing to sign off on.
But they're useful updates. Is it fair for me to put at this point then 0 at today's date?
Yes, that's
then you can update us accordingly.
And what's your direction of travel?
Well, I think the green arrow.
A green arrow.
Thank you. Did you have a question, Councillor?
Yeah, I want to go home.
Yeah, no, so do I.
Chairman.
So do I, absolutely. I don't trust me, I don't prolong these, but I'd like to have a fair debate. So, this, I think, brings us to the end. Any urgent business?
Have we not got number 9? Have we not seen number 9?
No, sorry, I think I've rotated, for the sake of clarity, for the portfolio holder to attend,
Oh, it's February.
that will be Tony.
Oh, that's Tony.
And it's individual electoral registration
Okay.
update. I think, as we've witnessed this evening, it's way too much to have all of this and a portfolio and Tony. So be minded. I guess more of
I would just say, you've got that down as portfolio holder. This is just reference for another meeting. I'm not looking to get anything on in February, but surely we're within our rights to ask the leader to come and be scrutinised.
Well, if we have a topic to scrutinise the leader with, I'm sure we can.
Well, it might be of use, really, because obviously he's shaping a strategic direction to see where he sees the authority going over the next 12 months or 2 years, because then it forearms you to start thinking about direction of scrutiny.
Councillor Perry, can I suggest that you save that for the next meeting in February where we're having this topic? Obviously we can only have one per meeting, I think, realistically. We've agreed for the 10th of February who we're going to have in, but make that recommendation for the next one if we'd like to have our leader in to have a discussion about the big picture. Good. Are we any final business? No. Very good. Thank you for your staying power. It just brings us just a short of 9:45.